Please rise for invocation by Councilmember Fleming, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Oh, gracious Father, we first want to thank you for this day and all of the many blessings and mercies that you have given to us. We ask you to please guide us and give us wisdom on difficult issues and those things that we are having difficulty in discussing and deciding. We ask that each of us do your will and do that which is pleasing in your sight. We also pray that we will be realizing that we sometimes fall very short. And as we fall short, we ask for an extra measure of humbleness for each of us to know that wisdom only comes from you, Lord. Please protect and strengthen each of our families, the city staff, our police, our firemen, and all of our other members of this organization, as well as our residents, their families. Please continue to protect and strengthen us all. We pray also that we will know the mercies that you have given us and be grateful for them. And we pray for those blessings that are to come and all those things you have done for us. These in your blessing we ask in your name. Amen.
Amen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Clerk will call the roll.
Councilmember John DeWorke.
Here.
Councilmember Lillian Fleming.
Here.
Councilmember Ken Gibson.
Here.
Councilmember Will Brisington.
Here.
Councilmember Russell Stahl.
Here.
Councilmember Dorothy Dow. Here. Mayor Knox White.
Here. Thank you. You have the minutes of December 12th. Will stand approved as submitted unless there are any objections or concerns. Council. If not, they are so approved. We're going to pick up a little bit of change in the agenda. We have a lot of people who signed up to speak on the zoning matter again, but we have some other people who are here for other things too. So I want to kind of get to that real quick here. A presentation from Legacy Park Friends. Who do we have on that? Here she comes. Oh, here they go. Yeah, okay. She's bringing a check with her, so that's good. All right. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a problem? Okay.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight, we are joined by the Legacy Park Friends, a nonprofit organization that works in partnership with the city to preserve and enhance Legacy Park. Over the past year, they have worked with city staff to set clear areas for improvement with the goal of maintaining and improving the appearance, and functionality of Legacy Park. We would like to recognize Legacy Park Friends and their tremendous success in 2022 as they have raised $56,500. These funds were used to purchase 2 shade structures, 5 picnic tables, 6 park benches, a bicycle rack, and additional plant material. We truly appreciate their time and dedication toward helping make Legacy Park a signature park for our community to enjoy. At this time, I'd like to invite them to come to the front, and we have an official.
Well, underline that was they raised $56,000, 56,600. They did. Yeah. Yeah, y'all come over.
And then
Yeah.
we could do a
Okay.
You want everybody?
Go ahead. Just
Well,
go
let me
ahead.
get Will. Let's Will to do this as his district. Yeah. That's a lot of cookies to be sold, or you didn't do it. I know you didn't.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah, tremendous improvements and a great fundraising effort too. We have a public hearing. We want to put this up first too. Who's in charge of the public hearing? Is that Lee?
That's me.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mayor and Council, as you know, later this evening, you'll hear first reading of an ordinance to approve a map of newly drawn council districts that are made necessary by population data from the 2020 U.S. Census, which showed that our current council districts are unequal in population. For your reference, we have the current city district boundaries and the population data for those. We also have available the draft map with the current boundaries overlaying it so that the areas of change are visible. And then finally, you have the draft map as it would appear if approved at first and second reading and if no changes were made from this draft plan. As you know, the redistricting process relies heavily on public input and participation. So the city's hosted 8 public meetings thus far and has facilitated input via email and through the city's redistricting website, all of which has been shared with all of council. In order to provide an additional forum for public input on redistricting, the public hearing portion of tonight's meeting has been set aside specifically for input on the draft map, if any has any to offer this afternoon, Mr. Mayor. I do have a statement that's been provided in writing from the local NAACP that I would like to read into the record, but at this time would invite any citizens wishing to offer input to the podium at this time.
Okay. Anyone wish to offer additional comments? We had a series of public meetings all over the city, multiple times, I might add, and received a lot of comment at that time. Okay?
Yes, Mayor, we've got Mr. Kilgore here.
Okay.
Okay, we've had 8 meetings. I've spoken to each of you at some length. I've corresponded at length with each of you. Let me remind you that this process started almost 1 year ago to the day, January 10th last year. We waited until October to even start off the first series of meetings, which didn't have any draft map, didn't have anything at all before the public. So those 4 meetings were really for show. The other 4 meetings, which I attended, were variously attended. I will note that the first draft map was released Wednesday afternoon before Thanksgiving, a really good time to get public input. And the map that you see before you was released on I believe it was the Wednesday before Christmas, with the city being closed on Thursday. So once again, everything possible that was done to facilitate this process and solicit real public input has been done. Don't know who came up with the map to begin with. The consultants have laid hidden. They have not shown their face. And the net effect from the final map that was presented before Christmas to what you see before you is a net transfer from District 3 to District 1 of a grand total of 96 people. And that is it. And that is the culmination of a couple months of process and that's it. You received my proposal regarding trying to restore the Augusta Road neighborhood community, which you have split in half along the lines of Augusta Road. And that was one of the things that you were aiming for back last January, was to restore neighborhoods and communities, keep them together. Instead, you have taken my neighborhood and split it in half. No reason to do that. I presented an alternative plan, which incidentally had the salutary effect of actually increasing minority representation in districts 2 and 3. But nonetheless, we come to the point now, after 8 meetings, a lot of listening, a lot of paperwork, 96 people next to the Richland Cemetery have been transferred. And thank you for taking those 96 people. At least it was something.
I am so proud of those 96 people and look forward to getting to know them better.
They're great constituents. But what happened, folks? What happened? How did we come to this path? Is this transparency? Is this Greenville at its best?
It's at the end.
It just, I'm
Okay,
stunned.
thank you.
I'm truly stunned at the outcome of this process.
Thank you.
Mr. Kilgore, could I get your address, please, sir?
Well, it's on every bit of my correspondence, but it's 11 Waccamaw Avenue, Greenville, South Carolina, 29605.
Thank you, sir.
Lee.
From the newly elected president of the local NAACP chapter, Mr. Mayor, dear Mayor, City Council, and City Attorney, I'm writing to express support for the process and draft map for the 2023 redistricting of the city of Greenville. I apologize for the writing, but I was sworn in as the new president of the Greenville branch of the NAACP Sunday, and I wanted to provide comments for today's public hearing. I'm proud to say that the Greenville NAACP has been involved with the city's redistricting process since it began. The South Carolina NAACP's hired demographer was sent a sample map in the beginning and reviewed all draft maps. He agreed with the first 2 sample maps and this final draft in order to maintain 2 minority-majority districts. The NAACP appreciates the mayor and council's work to keep diverse districts in light of the excessive gentrification experienced in the city of Greenville. Our branch pledges to work with the city as you work to improve the affordable housing to improve the needs of our community. Respectfully submitted, Reverend Emmanuel R. Fleming, Sr.
Okay, this concludes the public hearing. Thank you very much. We have other folks who signed up to speak on other matters too. Want to very quickly take Titus and Joe Maurice. You're both here. Okay, y'all come on up and one or both of you can speak on a matter on the agenda tonight. Thank you for your comments. We have a 3-minute rule, but you can. Okay, right. I had that impression. Thank you. Just give your name and address and.
So I'm Karen Titus, and my husband Wayne and I are here representing the Snow Green Coyote Craft Barbecue Food Trailer, local green-based food trailer, and
Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Joe Maurice. I'm the proud owner and operator of Rambo's Hot Dogs, which is a classic push cart style. As defined by the city of Greenville, a food trailer is an enclosed, attached or unattached unit designed for preparing or cooking food. Technically, I am not enclosed, but I am still classified as a trailer, so I hope that I will still be classified that after this, should it pass. All I ask is that I'm issued the tool of a business license so that I can get out there and earn an honest living, working the streets of Greenville, and I don't end up living on the streets of Greenville. I ask for your support as the smallest of small businesses, being a one-man owner-operator. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
and on behalf of ourselves as well as other food trailers, we truly appreciate your consideration in this matter.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it to our attention. Yeah, appreciate that.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. All righty, then we have a bunch of folks who signed up, some of whom have heard from before. So be mindful of that in terms of your time, but we do appreciate you coming here. It's been a long haul, a lot of public hearings and meetings. I hope everyone feels like at least you got your messages across to this council, and you certainly did. And I think all of us have taken it very, very seriously, no matter what anybody may think on. And how we come down, we've had a lot of internal discussion too. With that, for some more additional comments this evening, I'll start with Teresa Slack.
First, I want to thank everybody because you guys have really have given your time. Several have met with me and several have answered my numerous emails, and I do appreciate your time on this. I know many of you know Don Kuntz. He's a recipient of the Order of the Palmetto Award, which is the highest award given to a South Carolina resident. He was given that award because of his preservation of the history, particularly in Greenville, and particularly about the textile industry. I think even one of you guys called him your mentor. He's a wonderful, wonderful person, but he has given 45 years of his heart and soul into giving tours for free, speaking engagements, and even a documentary about the textiles. He has given me permission tonight, because he wasn't able to be here, because he's speaking again, to ask you guys to please vote no on this project. When the mills started closing their community centers, they were closing the stores. West Greenville was the center for their shopping, their socializing. This is a place that should be preserved. It is the last really holdout for the mills and the mill people. Because of my history work, I get contacted constantly by people all over the county. And they've been asking about, what do you think about this project? How do you think it's going? We hear the residents are speaking against it. I even spoke with one friend of mine who lives on Paris Mountain Friday night at an art thing. And he said, and I want to make sure I get this right. I got to scroll all the way down. He lives on Paris Mountain. The statement he made to me about the Woven Project, if City Council allows this to be built in West Greenville, it's really going to show that they just do not care. We would really like to work with you. Vote no on this, and we'd love to work with you going forward and really build something great, and together we can build a historic destination for tourists all around. Thank you.
Shelby Dodson.
Hi, my name's Shelby Dodson. I live at 417 Perry Avenue. Thank
Perry.
you all for your time. I'm here to speak in favor of Woven. I live on the west side of Perry Avenue, and I'm also one of the owners of the historic Plush Mills redevelopment. And I do share many of the concerns of my neighbors, and I actually see this project as a means of addressing some of those issues. I love our diverse community, and I recognize the challenges of combating gentrification. Most of us in this room would want to sell our home for as much as we possibly can. And homes in this area, whether owned by families or slumlords, are sold to the top bidder. And so the fabric of our community does change one by one, house by house. And no one has to come before City Council when that continues to happen on a unit by unit basis. This is an opportunity for something different and for a more impactful development. There hasn't been a project of this scale in the village in recent history. And so this density allows for over 40 new affordable units. The density, both in rooftops and commercial space, is imperative to facilitate mixed income housing and to create a more sustainable, massive neighborhood retail to keep local shop owners in business. On the Plush Mill site, we tried very hard to secure a grocer. Retail, rooftops, and traffic counts attract grocers. We had the traffic counts on 123, but we did not have enough rooftops or supporting retail for the grocer to consider our site for their urban model. Woven is a step in the right direction. This area will continue to grow with us or despite us. Without a rezoning, we'll likely get more of the same projects and individual homes that meet the current zoning that don't address our need for mixed income, workforce housing density, and additional neighborhood commercial. At the West Village, it's not a large area, and I believe that delaying or rejecting this project will exacerbate the challenges that we're facing. And we're running out of commercial infill sites large enough to make a meaningful impact on these issues. And so for these reasons, I'm personally grateful for the quality of the project Woodfield endeavors to build in my neighborhood, and I support the development. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. John Slipsky.
Good evening. Hello, my name is John Slipke. I live at 43 Tyndall Avenue in Greenville. Earlier today, I emailed a letter to City Council expressing my support for the Woven project in West Greenville. I apologize for the length of that letter. I hope you all had a chance to read it. As you know, on October 24th, City Council referred the Woven project to the Planning Commission for further study and recommendation on issues such as density, mass, and scale. I commend the Planning Commission for effectively managing the process to review the issues highlighted by City Council. The Commission methodically reviewed and debated each of the areas of concern. Likewise, I also commend Woodfield Development for the modifications and improvements that they have committed. As you know, the Planning Commission approved the project on November 29th. To me, the more significant issue beyond the Woven project is how the city will manage future growth. Greenville's growth has created a constrained housing market for home buyers and renters across the economic spectrum. The demand versus supply imbalance seen in many other regions of the country also exists here in Greenville. Overall housing production has not kept up with household growth. the supply of all types of housing, rental and owner occupied, will need to be increased in order to meet current and future demand. Nearly all future growth in the city will be infill development. With land availability constrained, growth can only be accommodated through higher density development. The issue is not the number of people coming into the region, it's how the housing market accommodates them. To achieve the goals of Greenville 2040, there must be more density built into our future development. Otherwise, the math will simply not work. The comprehensive plan and the work the city is doing on a new development code will provide a much-needed update to the city's land use and housing policy framework. However, implementation of a new framework that emphasizes multi-use density will face several barriers, not the least of which is resistance from nearby neighbors. I believe that the Woven project, as currently proposed, is consistent with the vision and goals of the comprehensive plan. I also believe that the project balances the objectives of the developer with several benefits to the Greenville community. The project also brings needed growth and economic activity to West Greenville. If approved, I believe the Woven project can become a model for future private development in Greenville. I urge City Council to accept the recommendation of the Planning Commission and approve the Woven project. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brian Albers.
Hello, my name is Brian Albers. I reside at 519 Wembley Road. In 2016, I participated in the Leadership Greenville Class of 43. Councilmember Stahl, you hosted our SimSoc, and I was placed in the Blue Room. I met my now business partner, Mario Brown, in that exercise and was just lit up over the idea of affordable housing and contributing to the community. Since then, I was introduced to the Greenville Housing Fund, and we've now purchased 176 apartment units in Greenville alongside them, and collectively owned 1,500 affordable housing units in the upstate, mostly in Greenville County. The GHF published a study in September 2020 that identified nodes ideal for affordable housing development, and this property is in one of those nodes. And by the way, I'm in favor of the project. The study showed that there was a 15,000 affordable housing unit deficit in Greenville at the time. Since then, it's now 20,000 units. This has occurred with all the growth post-COVID of the in-migration, and there's also been rent increases of 20% Greenville-wide in the year 2021, and in 2022, rents increased 16%. So this problem is getting much worse. In order to try to impact the problem, the only way to do that is to build more affordable housing. If we really want to create 20,000 units in this city, it's going to take an investment of about $4 billion, assuming that each unit costs $200,000. And currently, banks are lending at about 65% loan to value. So that's going to require a $1.4 billion equity investment in order to achieve. We, in fact, attempted to build new product in 2022, and we're just stunned how hard it was to find any available land that was in any of the nodes that the Greenville Housing Fund was suggesting that we develop in. And it became infeasible for us. And so we've just continued to only acquire and preserve affordable housing. This project also fits the new multi-county industrial park affordable incentive that was recently passed and checks all the boxes that is required. And I just don't understand how this wouldn't be a good project that would accomplish all the boxes that the city and county are trying to check in terms of the development of new affordable housing. So I encourage you to pass this. Thank you.
Joshua Blankenship.
Joshua Blankenship. I live at 39 Jones Street in the Brandon Mill community. The Brandon Mill Community Association remains in opposition to Woven because of its size and scale, but also because of what it means for the future of our neighborhood. Woven would sit 100% in Brandon. We've heard a lot through this process about what the Village Business District needs. They need Woven, Business owners need more foot traffic to survive. They need more parking. That's real. They do need more parking. Someone went as far in the last meeting as saying that they need a better demographic living around the village. I was a part of the first cohort of the Village Business Association, and for the past decade, the business district has always needed more than the surrounding neighborhoods can give them, because most of the businesses that have come to the village in the last 10 years don't serve their neighbors. My family and I frequent and patronize the businesses in the Village Business District. We're happy they're there. But if the business models depend on new developments of the size and scale of Woven and the primarily affluent residents in them, then I humbly suggest that they have poorly chosen their location. What business district in Greenville depends on the foot traffic of the surrounding homes to bolster their business? Brandon and West Greenville neighborhoods have real needs. The 35 total units at 40 and 60% AMI are laudable, but they come at a cost, attached to a massive development that will shape the rest of our neighborhood in its image. West Greenville needs missing middle and truly affordable housing and better, safer connections to the other mill villages and the amenities of the city. And I understand that most of Brandon is not currently in the city limits, but Woven would be, and its price point, footprint, and ultimate lack of concern for the cultural context around it will only exacerbate the divide that we already face, not weave it together. We want to see creative infill development that doesn't just pay lip service to the sense of place and history here, while fundamentally paving the way to erase it. I'm asking you to change your vote to give the thousands of residents in Brandon and West Greenville a fighting chance at working with you to redirect gentrification into something that can benefit our neighbors, not just the business and real estate speculators that have chosen to set up shop in the middle of us. I really do thank you for your time and all of your thought that you've put into this and for listening to us. Thanks so much.
Thank you. All right. Ryan Johnston.
Good afternoon. My name is Ryan Johnston. I live at 308 Chapman Road, Greenville, South Carolina. Again, we all agree that getting this right is critical, and I wanted to again thank council for the time that they put into this decision. And I'd also like to acknowledge all those in opposition. Again, thank you for caring. I did ask for those that came. It makes it a little bit more difficult seeing how there's standing room only to stand in their support. There's also additional individuals that are, because we're at capacity in the lobby. But all those that are in support, if you would at least raise your hand up and show, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Again, a lot of conversation today about missing middle and general density. The village as a node is not like all others. We all agree it is special. It does have history. It is, but then again, we are very limited areas to build on that density, which means that this specific site needs to do the heavy lifting and carry the load of that density in an effort to deliver on all the needed public goods, not just affordable housing. We are already set up to get 24 market rate houses directly next door on Pendleton Street. No retail, no public parking, no public space outside of the sidewalks. Brandon Mill owners have also talked about delivering an additional 20 plus for-rent townhomes. Both projects will deliver on the asking gentle density. However, neither projects will deliver any type of affordability at all. No public parking, no retail. Currently, a 3-bedroom unit at Brandon Mill is advertised at $2,935 online. What do you think a 4-bedroom house will cost per month? Again, much smaller scale means much more expensive rent, residential or commercial. That is not a solution to our growth problems in Greenville. That is, in fact, gentrification, or more or less the same of already what's in motion. That is what you're looking at on that map. Whatever we can or will build on this site by right is, again, it's not a threat, it's just the economics, and everyone loses. Again, getting it wrong is what comes out of this project not moving forward, and we end up being forced to deliver on the market rate with no parking, no public goods, no parks, no affordable commercial retail. That's a situation, again, where everyone loses. Both your planning staff and planning commission understand how that equation works together. And again, that's why they've recommended approval of the 214 units. This is taken directly from the Planning Commission's report to staff. The commission recognizes that density is part of affordable housing equation. Within South Carolina, a planned development is one of the city's few opportunities to incorporate affordable housing in a project. Again, thank you all for the time and consideration you put into this very difficult matter.
Carol Cox.
I live at 55B Endale Street in Greenville, and thank you for your time. Thank you for all that you've considered and emails you've read from myself and others. And I just have a short statement. I hope it's short. I don't think the Woven project is viable for this area. It's going to force the people that are living there in some of the rental properties and some of the areas now, it's going to force them out. Many of our Black residents are already being forced out of their homes in this area, and of course, I'll say even in the West Greenville area. As recently as yesterday, a new series in the Greenville News was titled "The Cost of Unity," and it brings to mind a similar situation here from our village of West Greenville regarding this Woven project. Woven would take away the unique atmosphere of the historic Pendleton Street, which used to be just West Greenville, a little town where Brandon Mill, Poe Mill, and the others got together and shopped. Yes, it's gone through closed doors and boarded up windows, just like Greenville was at one point in time too, before Mayor Knox came on board and helped along with behind Mr. Workman. Woven will take away from this unique atmosphere as this historic neighborhood on Pendleton Street. It also hurts those that are trying to sustain their lives that live already in houses that are already there in the Brandon community, whether it's city or county. I don't think it matters. It's called community, and West Greenville being one of them as well. And they are trying to sustain their lives. Some of them are renting, and they've rented for a long time, for many years, and have parents that they take care of. And some of them are generational homes where it's third generation living in them. But when you bring the Woven in and you make those houses go away, those people have nowhere to go. I'm hurt to think that my city council would vote for such a small parcel of land for such a massive structure. And we've discussed this, and it's been noted, and size has been presented on the screen, and it's higher than anything else, and it's too big. And they talk about offering affordable housing, but it can't be affordable, and it can't be that many that can be affordable. As the young man spoke early, we do need more affordable housing. But I think bringing the Woven project in with the percentage that they're trying to, or that they're willing to give for affordable housing is not enough, and it's not affordable. Thank you.
Mr. Rumler.
Hey, y'all. Good evening. TJ Rumler, 16 Burdette Street, Greenville 29611. I didn't want to come tonight and almost didn't. But I was speaking with, I work with Greenville County Schools, and I was working with a high school student this week who was struggling with some things in his school that he was hoping to see change. And as I was sitting there, I found myself being a hypocrite, because as I was talking to him and saying things like, if you really care about this, why don't you join student government? And he kept pushing back about how he thought it was a pointless process, and it was just too much work and too much to get into. And I said, well, really, when you're going to get into service, whether it's, social work, clinical work like I do, or the work that you all do, it's not about you. It's about the people that you serve. I'm tired. Like, I'm a native of West Greenville, and it pains me to see what is happening to our neighborhood. The heartbeat of it is changing. What I love about my neighborhood, what created me, what shaped me, it's just not the same anymore. And if you've spent time there, I saw the picture that Ryan passed around. Like I remember when it wasn't too long ago, but I can remember those streets, and it meant a lot to me. And as much as I love what's happening now, it scares me to see what's going to happen. We can talk about parking, we can talk about the infrastructure, all those head issues. But when I think about it, what I wanted to come up here tonight from is just speak from the heart. There's no doubt that if passed, Woven is going to change the fabric of our community. And I would challenge anybody to argue that point. I think there's a lot of good financial reasons that, that could benefit. Most people that are arguing in favor of this, it's going to benefit their pocket. Hell, a lot of us that are arguing against it, it would benefit our pocket. But what I would ask you to do is vote in favor of the people who live there now. Those of us who go to sleep there, who get up, drive out and go to work every morning. Some of us walk to go to work every morning, but who pay taxes in West Greenville. Think about those who are from there, who maybe some still live there, maybe some have already been pushed out, but think about maybe those who will be pushed out, depending on your vote on this evening. And not necessarily for those who don't even live in Greenville yet, but could move because of this project. That's really the choice that you have, in my opinion, on this. And I hope that you will consider voting no on Woven for those of us who currently live in West Greenville. Thank you.
Mr. Ken Cole.
Go.
My name is Ken Cobb, and I'm the chair of the Sociology Department at Furman University. I live at 17 Casey Street and have been a city resident for 15 years. I have studied Greenville's special emphasis neighborhoods extensively for the past decade, beginning with a fight to restore the Hampton Avenue Bridge. I recently published an academic book on gentrification in Southern Side and West Greenville. For the past year, I have led an interdisciplinary team of researchers to document the economic and demographic changes that have taken place in Greenville over the past 30 years. We published our report this morning, and you can access all of our data, analysis, findings, and methodology at communitygbl.org. That's communitygbl, one word. I have some data I'd like to share with you as you make your decisions about the Woven project and other new mixed-use developments in the future. The number of Black residents in the city of Greenville has declined every single year for the past 40 years, a slow and steady decline of 22% over that time. However, the loss of Black residents has been the most stark in Greenville's historically Black communities. In these special emphasis neighborhoods, the Black population has dropped a staggering 53%. While it is true that many Black professionals who could afford to live in the city during this period voluntarily moved away to live in neighboring suburbs, our data show that the vast majority of displaced Black residents were priced out. As home values and rents rise, the average Black family in Greenville can no longer compete for housing. This is because the city of Greenville has one of the most extreme white-Black income imbalances in the entire Southeast. Based on the most recent American Community Survey data collected by the U.S. Census Bureau, the median white household in the city of Greenville now makes more than 2.8 times the annual income of the median Black household. To put that number in context, racial income inequality in Greenville now surpasses that of Richmond, Huntsville, Birmingham, Chattanooga, Winston-Salem, Knoxville, Greensboro. Because of this racial income imbalance, even units pegged at affordable rates of 80 or 60 or even 50% of area median income, as defined by HUD for our metropolitan area, will be out of reach for the median Black household. 2 decades ago, the city of Greenville made a promise to its special emphasis neighborhoods to protect them from development they felt was not in character with their history and community values. Whatever decisions you make today, I ask you do so in light of the data presented in our report. If you want to reverse the displacement of Black residents from Greenville, you'll need to make bold decisions to ensure that the benefits of our city's revitalization are shared equitably among all, not for just those who can afford it.
Thank you. Mr. Robert Benedict.
Good evening, Mayor White, council members. My name is Robert Benedict, and I live at 402 Hampton Avenue. I have 35 years' experience in real estate development and academia. I am the former director of Clemson's Master of Real Estate Development program, and I currently teach in Clemson's City and Regional Planning program. During the past 6 months, Mary Knox and I have worked closely with stakeholders in the village of West Greenville. Incidentally, the original name was Stradleyville. Didn't know if y'all knew that. Stradleyville. As co-instructors of a professional city and regional planning studio class. The course is a critical analysis of the village of West Greenville. The graduate students have thoughtfully analyzed the village's challenges and opportunities while focusing on the 2021 Microvision Plan, the 2017 WLA Historic Resources Survey, and the Greenville 2040 Plan. We have accompanied our students to meetings with business owners, residents, and developers regarding their vision for the village. We have observed the earlier city council meetings and neighborhood meeting and planning commission hearings. During that time, Brian Schick has solicited and incorporated suggestions to improve the Woven project. During my 35 years as a developer and as a faculty member, I cannot recall another developer who has been as patient and as accommodating as Brian in Woodfield has. They love him in Asheville. He's doing 2 projects in the River Arts District, tough projects. It's also an area that really needs some help. Sincerely, he's been a great lesson to my students how to listen and how to revise development plans to better complement the character of the community. It's apparent, and Shelby Dotson mentioned this earlier, it's apparent that the village needs a higher residential density. Most of the village's retail has clearly struggled from a lack of rooftops. This development will provide much needed multifamily housing with an affordable housing component. It should also be noted that quality developments similar to the Woven have often been a catalyst for marked improvement in a community. The worst outcome would be a denial and the site be developed as upscale condominiums or townhomes. That would only add fuel to the fire of gentrification. It is unfortunate to me to see how the Woven has become a lightning rod for pre-existing conditions such as traffic and gentrification, when it can actually be a catalyst for improvement. I urge you to vote yes to approve this development. Thank you.
So Daniel Fontaine. Daniel Fontaine.
Danielle Fontaine from 236 Red Street in the West End, West Greenville, and 201 Abney Street in the village of West Greenville. I am in favor of the Woven project. I do understand the nostalgia for the old industrial village, but we can't recreate the past. The industry is gone, and the growing city is lapping at our doorstep. We now face a choice between reinventing ourselves as an urban village or morphing into a suburb. A strong commercial hub, supported mainly by locals, is the essential and central characteristic of a village. Our hub has been on life support for much too long, and it's now largely dependent mostly on visitors from the city and tourists. We must reclaim our own beating heart, and we need the higher density to sustain it in a new, increasingly urban context. The village is bigger than most people realize. It's plenty big enough to support this very thoughtfully designed project without taking away everything else that's already so wonderful about our village. This is not a zero-sum game. It is a necessary and, in my opinion, a beautiful step forward. And this project is in the perfect location at the intersection of our 2 commercial streets. And while needed to restore our beating heart, Woven is even more essential to bringing diversity back to our village, because the best way to promote social diversity is to promote diversity of housing forms. I know Woven does not address the missing middle or provide anywhere near enough low-cost housing units, but it is very important for the city of Greenville to project early and clearly the whole spectrum along which it is willing to work to ensure that it has the tools to bring diversity back to the village. And time is of the essence. Proceeding at this point only with the dozens of townhomes that are already in development would create inertia against welcoming more diverse forms later. In my experience in this process here and my many years on the design review board, I've found that newcomers are typically the loudest voices against future change. And I'd like to address the developers also. I wholeheartedly hope that your project is accepted here tonight. And if so, I know you'll be very successful with it. And when this happens, I beseech you to modify your business model for a season or two and help us address this issue of the missing middle. Because sadly, we really don't have that many people knocking at our doors to help us in this regard. And in fact, I beseech everyone who has succeeded in this beautiful village to help us plant the seeds for others to succeed and to help us welcome back to the village the important voices that we've lost in the last few years. Thank you very much.
Kenzie Biggins, you don't have to walk very far.
Hi, my name is Kenzie Biggins, and I live at 28 Burdett Street. So why isn't there a project like Woven on the Augusta Road in the Augusta Road area? This is a serious question. I hear the arguments for putting Woven in West Greenville, but based on those arguments, which include that this is only about the businesses and the residents' voices should not matter, why isn't there a Woven in the Augusta Road area? There's plenty of businesses that could benefit from the foot traffic, including several that I have watched shutter over the past 2 years. But if Woven isn't the solution for them, why is Woven the solution for my neighborhood? Is there a real goal here that's not being discussed? Is this really about driving up commercial rents in our neighborhood, which would really benefit the majority of the investors in the Woven project, who also just happen to own the majority of the commercial space on the Pendleton corridor? Intended or not, there's been a lot of things said during this process, which have been some dog whistles for me, including the fact that Henry Horowitz stood here on December 12th and said that West Greenville needs better demographics in order for the businesses to survive. You know, when I think about the future of West Greenville, I don't think it should be a place only for people who are white and upper middle class. But when you say that you need a better demographic, that's what that says to me, a Black woman, whether you intend to or not. I want to believe more of this city. I want to believe more of our mayor. I want to believe more of our counselors. I've had conversations with many of you during this process. But this process has been extremely disheartening for me. This whole process can't be based on the idea that there is going to be just a few affordable housing units. I'm going to refer back to that story that was run this morning in the Greenville newspaper. Would Miss Sharon Logan be welcome in this development? Would she be able to live in one of these affordable units? Whether you want to admit it or not, I don't think she would be, and I don't think I'm the only one. If you vote yes to Woven, you're delivering a message that gentrification over community at any cost, whether you mean to or not. At the end of the day, if this project doesn't belong in the Augusta Road area, it doesn't belong in my neighborhood. All of your citizens matter, and we deserve a place of belonging, not just a place for a better demographic. Thank you.
Adam Shimmer. Adam Shimmer. Okay. Mr. Darrell Adams.
Good afternoon. Mayor Knox, Council. I've been a lifelong Greenvillian, period. I've been here, I've been moved away and come back. I've seen a lot of growth in this area. And I've chose to move to West Greenville when I came back from Atlanta. I saw a lot of quote unquote, what we call gentrification in Atlanta, in some areas that were historically minority. But the developers that came in, they really did not care about the people. I've had numerous conversations with Ryan. I've had numerous conversations with the owners of the businesses in the area. And now that I'm a business owner, I taught school for 18 years here in the district. I left because I could not afford to live in the district. I moved to Easley, came back, moved to Atlanta, came back. Home, it keeps calling me home. This is my home. And I love Greenville. And I know after speaking with Ryan, speaking with a lot of the other people in the area, that they have nothing but the best interest in mind with this project. And when I lived here in Greenville before, I lived in the Viola community. And I was neighborhood association president, things like that. I poured my heart into the city. And it pains me now to see what Viola has become. Right now, there's one person in Viola that has bought up all the houses that people got taxed out of, because the neighborhood adjacent to it, the housing market blew up and everybody got priced out of affordable housing. With what Woven has proposed, with the business model that they proposed, with the rent, with the retail rent being frozen, with the affordable housing being there for this, I think that with the heart that they have, I think that Woven would be a viable, good, excellent, all the adjectives that you can say for that community. Now, I am new to West Greenville, and Ms. Fleming, Mayor Knox, you know how I am with the neighborhood. I pour my heart into it, and I will do the same thing here. Just I ask that you approve this Woven. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Laura Cooper. We'll get you next.
My name is Laura Cooper. My husband and I started our business in the Brandon community in 1994. Our business is located at 26 Draper Street. The Brandon community is a mixed income and mixed race community. It is full of diversity, and that's the one thing that we really love about the community. We own 29 properties in the Brandon community. We rent to one white family, 2 mixed race families, and the rest are all minorities. All are hardworking people, mostly in relatively low income jobs. They work hard, they pay their rent faithfully every month, and they contribute to society. The reason I'm speaking today is my concern for our tenants and for other tenants in the Brandon community. A luxury apartment complex like Woven, charging downtown Greenville rents, will certainly lead to increased rents in the area that will force hardworking families out of their homes. If low-income, mixed-race tenants are forced out of the Brandon Mill, where can they go? Quite literally, some of these people will end up on the street. Others will have to go move out of Greenville. And these are the people who work in Greenville. And they're doing essential jobs. They may not be glamorous jobs, but they're essential. We all know what is happening in these mill villages is nothing but gentrification. It is all designed to move out the minorities and bring in white people who can afford the high rents and have the excess money to spend at their retail locations. I have nothing against people who are able to do this, but not at the expense of the people who have made the Brandon community their homes. And those are our tenants. We will continue to take care of our tenants. We will give them homes that they can afford, and we're not slumlords. I worry about those tenants that will lose their homes, and I already know of those who have been given notice that their rents are going so high that they have to move. And I know this because they knock on my door every day asking if we have anything available. I ask all of you as elected officials to think hard about your decision today. Because this is people's lives and livelihoods that are going to be affected. I've always felt that this project is a done deal, but it doesn't have to be. All of you can make a difference. You can show that you really care and that you believe in the people that you represent, all of the people that you represent, not just the ones whose incomes are comparable to your own. And I thank you for listening.
Mr. Adams, sorry. I won't ask you where you were, but you know.
Adam Schrimmer, 133 Twinbrook Drive, Greenville, 29607. Thanks for your time today and for the opportunity to speak. I don't have a business in West Greenville, and I don't live in West Greenville. I live in the city, and I'm a public artist, and I work with literally every neighborhood that surrounds our downtown area, including downtown. I spend a lot of time with people in their neighborhoods, having conversations and hanging out with them. And I think if you ask the people in the neighborhood, not the business owners, the people in the neighborhood, the homes, you went door to door and you asked if this was something they wanted there, the answer would be no. You're not going to do that, and that's okay. The people that are here in defense of that project are the business owners that don't. Maybe some of them have a place there, but it isn't their home. And the benefits of this property will benefit the village, but I'd argue that it wouldn't be the village anymore. Woven just looks like an extension of the West End. Its size and magnitude blocks Brandon Mill, which is the anchor of that community. That is the anchor. This project is not. And if you block it, what does that say to the rest of the communities around it? You're basically saying that what created Greenville or what made it is less important now because now this is. And the people that will frequent those areas and the people that will enjoy those spaces are not the people from the neighborhood. And I'd argue even further that the people who buy these places or rent these places won't even frequent the establishments that are in the village. They'll probably travel to other neighborhoods to get their coffee or go downtown. So it seems like there's an agenda that exists. Something has to be done, and it's at the expense of people's homes and their lives. I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it anyways. The whole thing is kind of gross. You're talking about people's homes and where they live and where they come to every day, compared to dollars and cents and homes and how many stories and whatever you want to call it. And I know that y'all are thinking it. Maybe you'll say it, maybe you won't, but it's just kind of gross. You're going to extend Main Street into the village, into the arts district, and you won't have an arts district. It'll just become an extension of the West End. You ask yourselves if that's what you really want, at the expense of a really beautiful neighborhood full of really rich culture, really beautiful people. You're going to extend Main Street into the arts district. It won't exist anymore. It'll fundamentally change. It has changed, and it'll change again. Only this time, once this door is open, you're opening the floodgates. And once this building goes up, you're just making room for how many more? You know it. I know it. Everybody in here knows it. The question is whether or not you allow it to happen. Do something different. Make an example of Greenville to other cities and do it different. Create a space that welcomes everybody and not just the upper crust. Thank you for your time.
Let's see, got off my feet here. Russell Connor.
My name is Russell Connor. I live at 203 Trinity Way. Council, I'm the owner of 7 Traction Street, which is approximately 550 feet from the Woven project. which is what I want to discuss with you today. I'd like to give 3 examples of buildings that were, a reasonable person could say were too big at the time they were built. But today, probably no one would say that today. The first example is the Daniel Building, which was, at the time it was built, the tallest building in the state and is still the tallest building in the upstate. It was hundreds of feet taller than anything in its surrounding area. No doubt, when you were driving by it as it was being constructed and the steel was reaching higher and higher, it must have been a pretty jarring sight to see something that tall when everything else around it was no more than a few stories. Likewise, Falls Tower at Camperdown is the 3rd tallest building in the city and is by far the tallest building and most visible building from Falls Park. It was obvious as it was being built that the views from within the park were going to change because that building was there. For instance, from the Governor's School side of the park, if you look towards the Liberty Bridge, clearly Falls Tower looms over the landscape. Also, the Grand Bohemian Hotel, which is right next to the park and next to Liberty Bridge, also is much larger and taller than the building it replaced. So again, we saw the line of sight change very dramatically from pretty much anywhere in the park because that building was there. My point is, with all of those buildings today, would we say, is the Daniel Building too tall? Did we not gain more from the construction of Falls Tower and the Bohemian Hotel than we lost from the changes in the view sites from the park? I would say all of those buildings and pretty much any building of considerable size is going to be jarring to your consciousness as it first goes up. It's different. It's impossible to ignore. But pretty soon, you begin to accept that it's part of the landscape. You forget what it used to look like, and the new normal is what is going up. This is expected and is normal. For a city not to change is a city not to grow. This project will bring many very big benefits to the area and to the city. Affordable housing, additional market rate housing, which is in short supply. It will bring infrastructure improvements through the sidewalks and streets. We should not walk away from this opportunity simply because change can be difficult. The gentrification is already happening and it's not going to stop.
Okay.
This project is or not.
Thank you. Linda George.
Hello, my name is Linda George. I live in the Freetown community at 304 Alice Avenue. I'm in an awkward position. My family has owned businesses in the Pendleton Street area. I know the area well, and I know the businesses in the area. But I have been advised that I'm not allowed to mention any of them or my connection to them. I'm not the only person in this awkward position of opposing Woven, but being concerned about the implications of being fully candid. But I feel very strongly that Woven is inappropriate, too massive, and destructive of the village feel that has characterized the area for over 100 years. It was that feel, or hard to describe vibe, that attracted many businesses to the area. Businesses with good products that people seek can attract business from throughout Greenville and beyond and become a destination location. They succeed, others don't. A business friend in the area put it this way: we built our business knowing that it would have to be a destination. So we had to have a great product and atmosphere. We have done that. Other businesses can do the same with or without tons of people's living steps away. If your business and products suck, people won't come no matter how close they live. It is a myth that Woven is needed for businesses to succeed, and that Woven will assure that all businesses succeed. I believe that attempts to convert the Pendleton Street shops to some bustling downtown-like shopping area will destroy what makes the area so appealing. That may be a developer's dream, especially as the landlord too, but it's not beneficial for the stores and shops on Pendleton. I would love to say more, but can't. It would break my heart if Woven is allowed to be built because it would destroy the history and character of Pendleton Street and all the neighborhoods surrounding it, including mine. Please protect that history and character. Vote no on Woven. Thank you.
Margaret McGinty.
My name is Margaret McGinty. I live at 104 Mason Street in the Brandon neighborhood. Once again, I'm here to express my opposition to the Woven project because it is too big and completely inappropriate for the site chosen. It is out of scale, out of character, out of style, and altogether out of keeping with the surrounding neighborhoods. West Greenville and Brandon, the neighborhoods that will be impacted by this project, are established historic neighborhoods. But because they're not wealthy, the majority of you on city council is on the brink of selling them out in order to satisfy two well-off non-resident property owners, an out-of-town development company, and the city's own desire for wealth. Wealth which it will no doubt use to attract more speculators and developers to whom it will sell out more of our not-so-affluent neighborhoods in the all-too-familiar cycle of gentrification. I wonder, Mr. Mayor, if you've ever had developers traipse through your neighborhood, knocking on doors, asking your neighbors to sign away their homes or their rights to object to what is built next door to them. Do you assume that our homes are less important to us than yours is to you just because ours are smaller and perhaps shabbier? Is there no place in your grand scheme for Greenville for lower income neighborhoods and those of us who by choice or necessity live in them? Do you genuinely believe that you will make our city more attractive by ruining the character of Pendleton Street and the livability of two historic and diverse neighborhoods just to build an enormous apartment complex? And do you think that we should be pacified when you throw us the bone you call affordable housing, which indeed is affordable for people poorer than you, but richer than us? This affordable housing tool is just camouflage behind which the most vulnerable will still be pushed out, while the developer is assured of his profit and the city can tell itself that it cares for its lower income citizens almost as much as it does for its bottom line. In closing, it occurs to me that if the city of Greenville preserved, protected, and supported its low-income neighborhoods instead of displacing them with projects like Woven, there would be no need for your so-called affordable housing. Thank you.
Okay, Jared Moore.
Good evening. My name is Jared Moore, and I live at 3 Mason Street in the neighborhood of West Greenville. I would first like to thank you and the members of staff for the vital work that you do in shaping our city's future. Projects like these are challenging as they bring together many people with a variety of interests, opinions, and beliefs. But I think it's safe to say, judging by the amount of people that are here tonight, that we all want what's best for Greenville, though we may disagree on how that's accomplished. Tonight, I'm here to speak in favor of Woven. My home sits about 400 feet from this project and will be easily seen from the front windows of my home. I'm an architect by trade, but tonight I'm here as a resident. I've watched the design of this project evolve over the many meetings with the neighborhood, planning commission, and city council. I think the project is well designed and will further activate the surrounding streets and retail. The project will bring much needed street improvements and sidewalks, which will make the neighborhood more walkable and safer for residents. It also offers a much needed level of affordability, both in the residential units and retail spaces, a concept that will be the first of its kind in the state. The increased foot traffic created by this project will help sustain and grow the existing restaurants and retail within our neighborhood. These small businesses, who've taken great entrepreneurial risk, are heavily dependent on this increase of foot traffic. A project like Woven would create a true mixed-use community in terms of both its uses and rents. It would create a node. In the Greenville 2040 plan, it calls specifically for this neighborhood to be a node. It also calls for, quote, a new way of growing, and to embrace a higher density urban form as a model for growth within these nodes. I believe that our neighborhood can be a great example of a true community node and show what the values of the 2040 plan can accomplish. In projects like these, in life in general, it's easy to find the bad, the negative. It seems to be that way in many areas of our lives these days. But what's hard is finding the good. Finding the good requires effort, requires discipline, it requires setting aside your opinions and listening. It requires being courageous and taking bold action even when difficult. No project is ever perfect, but I believe there's more good than bad when seeing Woven move forward. Greenville is no stranger when it comes to taking bold action for the growth of our city. When it comes to planning, we're known for our innovation. From Falls Park, the baseball stadium in downtown, to the recently completed Unity Park and the many projects that will follow, we've established a national reputation for successful planning and development. And I believe that Woven continues that spirit of innovation and entrepreneurship towards a Greenville that's successful for all. I thank you again for your service, for your commitment to the success of our city, and I am hopeful for our future. Thank you.
Jack Olson.
Good evening. My name is Jack Olson, 25 Draper Street. I've gone through various drafts trying to figure out how to say something useful. I've scrapped all prior drafts because we can't put blinders on and ignore the reality of Woven. It is as simple as black and white. Woven will have 214 apartments with white occupants and perhaps 5% upscale Black occupants. Brandon Mill, where I live, has those demographics. So basically, Woven apartments will be white. And I know some council members get all excited about, quote, affordable housing. I believe that that term is horribly misleading. Affordable housing in Woven is a vehicle for white folks to live in a luxury apartment at a discount. These are people who can afford to have housing elsewhere. It is also a developer excuse to justify the mass and scale of Woven. The affordable housing excuse does not justify the racial disparity it will create. And who gets priced out? Black and Hispanic. Brandon is 60% minority, but more Hispanic than Black. Black families largely have already been displaced. These are uncomfortable realities. Face them squarely. Face them squarely with your consciences intact when you vote. And consider Sharon Logan. I hope you read about Sharon Logan in the Greenville News this morning. Unity Park has its casualties, but at least Unity Park has a public purpose. Woven has no public purpose, just the commercial interests of the developers. But it gets worse. The developers of Woven have stated a specific intent of changing the demographics of the area. Sharon Logan wouldn't be an unintended casualty, she would be a target. Move her out, upgrade the demographics. From my perspective, that is simply cruel and an embarrassment for Greenville. And who's going to decide the fate of Woven? 7 people. Again, it may be as simple as black as white. Will it be the councilors most closely aligned with our area that prevail? Our council lady, Lillian Fleming, our councilor at large, Dorothy Dow and Ken Gibson, with one other? Or will it be those most remote and different from our area in distance, economic levels, racial makeup, who decide that we need Woven, whether we like it or not? We'll be watching and listening as you vote. Your vote will reverberate throughout the Greenville area and beyond. you will be sending a message about your values.
Okay, thank you.
Be proud of your vote.
And King.
So just to clarify, I am the council member for District 3. Mr. Stahl is the other at-large council member.
All of you have one of these that illustrates missing middle. I'm Ann King. I live at 34 Burdette Street. Just less than 1 year ago, we first heard about plans for a mixed-use apartment development on Pendleton. Later, we learned the full scope of Woven, a pair of massive 5 to 6 story buildings, each with the footprint of a football field, inserting themselves into neighborhoods, dividing Brandon from West Greenville, and dominating the historic Milltown Center. No one asked residents what we wanted. Residents were never given a chance to consider alternatives to Woodfield's standard 250-unit apartment complex. The developer simply told us, this is what we do. We ask you tonight to vote no to Woven. Give residents a voice. Added affordability and density, mixed use, and live work can be compatibly scaled to surrounding neighborhoods. Enter missing middle housing. The idea behind missing middle housing is to provide diversity in housing options within walkable urban neighborhoods, while keeping the character of the neighborhoods intact. The Pendleton Street, Brandon, and West Greenville area is circled on page 64 of the Greenville 2040 plan as suitable for missing middle housing. In 2019, Impact Greenville contracted with Opticos Design, a leading urban design and architectural firm with expertise in missing middle housing. The Opticos study and report to Greenville City and County Councils noted that in Greenville, the choices primarily continue to be single-family houses and large apartment projects. Yet 59% of millennials and 27% of baby boomers are looking for missing middle. Duplexes, triplexes, courtyard apartments, townhomes, and multiplexes. Missing middle home types could help meet the demand by expanding housing diversity at various price points. And in West Greenville, missing middle could add density at a scale that complements the historic fabric. With Woven, we're being asked to accept a project that leaps on that drawing from extreme to extreme, single-family homes to mid-rise apartment complex, with no consideration of alternatives in between. This vote will determine the future of a singular place in all of Greenville. You have the power to take the long view. Vote to deny Woven. Instead, consider how to engage and foster diverse community, expand housing diversity with missing middle, and actually weave together neighborhoods. Let's start a new year with a new plan that fits this place. Let's reimagine together. Thank you.
Darren, your name.
My name is Darren Gerke. I live at 36 Burdette Street. I've been a business owner on Pendleton Street for 9 years and a resident of West Greenville. Several times a week, I walk my dog past Brandon Mill, and I'm always impressed by the sheer scale of the building. But I also know the building was created to house massive pieces of textile machinery and its operators. What's even more impressive is that the mill designers were careful not to place the building too close to the sidewalk and make sure that the mill homes were a comfortable distance away from the mill structure. Using the size of Brandon Mill to justify the size of Woven is ignoring history and context. We don't need a fake mill in West Greenville. We need development that is appropriate in size and scale that will complement the mill village and will contribute to creating a sense of place. Constructing a facade over the Brandon Mill Village will not connect and unify our community. All of Greenville's recent planning documents require things like community involvement and inclusive growth. If city officials require developers to adhere to these tenets, we wouldn't be here battling each other with our 3-minute snippets. We would all be here enthusiastically supporting new appropriate development. Woven will not weave together our community. It will create a barrier between neighborhoods. It'll wedge pedestrians between traffic and the building at the corner of Pendleton and Smith Street. It'll impose its mass on the adjacent single-story mill homes because an appropriate transition still does not exist. It will force families from their homes as mill home rents continue to rise. There are better options. Please vote no on Woven.
Mr. Mario Brown.
Good evening. I'm Mario Brown, 5 Dale Drive, Greenville, South Carolina. I'm a native of Greenville and I own a property on 3 North Textile in the village. In addition to being a property owner in West Greenville, I've worked closely on affordable housing preservation projects with the Greenville Housing Fund, Share Head Start, Front Porch Housing. I'm also a board member of Homes of Hope, where I get a front row seat to the challenges of low density affordable housing development and construction cost. The displacement of low and moderate income African American households within West Greenville has been driven by a multitude of factors, some of which stand in opposition to this very project today. Another fact, or another key issue impacting gentrification is the inefficient single-family and low-density residential flips and developments that have happened quietly and deteriorated all housing options for people, both on the purchasing and the rental side. If Woven can deliver 44 units of affordable housing and generate a response or any sign of life that we see a problem, we see that we need housing, I'm for it. I think it helps to quantify what we mean when we talk about affordable housing. The project proposed goes down to 40% AMI, our average median income. For comparison, a Section 8 voucher is comparable to 55% AMI. So when they say affordable, I really do feel like that would be a win for the community. Perfect is the enemy of good. Density is the only way to pay for 44 affordable units in the area. That's an area that's, I mean, it's obvious that it's starving for affordable options. Market units market unit density creates space for affordable units. I think the options are pretty simple here. There are a lot of emotions, a lot of facts and perspectives. Less density, fewer affordable units, more density, more affordable units. I'd ask council to approve density and its inevitable congestion over the continued lack of affordable housing options in West Greenville. Thank you.
And Ms. Brian Albers. Oh, you did, oh, you signed up twice. Can't do that.
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, thank you all very much for powerful comments from many, many people, and we appreciate that, and we'll have some discussion by council here and see what we say about this, but thank you very much for that. Yes, did you raise your hand?
No.
I guess that's the public hearing part. Okay.
Oh,
We go
Mr.
back to
Mayor.
agenda, I guess,
We,
don't we?
we do have some people that may need a break.
5 minutes.
Just
A break?
5
Y'all want a little break?
You're
Okay, I see. Okay, they're making hand signals to me. I didn't know what they were referring to. Okay, we'll have about a 5-minute break.
I'm good.
Thank you. About a 5-minute break. Thank you very much.
5 minutes.
I keep it down. Okay, I'll try to keep myself.
Where's Liz?
They are delicious. All righty. I'm gonna move to item 14C. Item 14C, clerk call.
Oh, we're switching?
14C. The whole thing, you do abbreviation.
An ordinance to annex approximately 1.387 acres of real property, annex approximately 0.32 acre of adjacent right-of-way, and rezone approximately 1.54 acres located on Pendleton Street, Traction Street, Seco Street, and Smith Street, and to provide the zoning designation of PD.
Okay, a motion, please. Motion. Second. Motion and second, all right. Oh, Ms. Shannon.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Council, members of the community. Before I start the presentation this evening, I'd like to ask for my moment of personal privilege at the beginning and not at the end. And, this has been a long project for the community. It's been a long project for the planning staff and for the City of Greenville staff. And I have 5 members of my staff here this evening with me. We've worked on this project to answer concerns from the community, to answer calls from you all, to work on planning commission reports, et cetera, for 6 months. And I could not be here this evening without the incredible staff of the City of Greenville. And so they get the thanks first this evening. And I want to thank Barrett, Mayor Douglas, I get to work with them every day, and I'm blessed. So thank you, Mary Douglas, Michael, Barrett, Edward, and Austin for everything and for being here to support me and this community. Okay, now. All right, here we go. We're ready, Megan? Got the slides up? So, good evening. The Woven Project is a mixed-use plan development and annexation request for 12 properties totaling 2.91 acres next to the village of West Greenville. Next slide, please. Here, you can see the 6 parcels currently in the city limits and 6 in the county. All 12 would be included within the rezoning before you this evening. The property is located within the West Greenville Special Emphasis Neighborhood. Next slide. Again, here are the 6 parcels and right-of-way segments that would be annexed into the city. Next slide. This slide documents the procedural history for the project. As you'll recall, City Council remanded the project back to Planning Commission in October for additional study. The Planning Commission recommended approval in November. We presented the Planning Commission's report to City Council on December 12th. Next slide. As presented at the December 12th meeting, the application has been revised as follows. And we're going to walk through all of these items in the next few slides. Okay, next slide, Megan. Thank you. The development layout is essentially the same as before. You see the locations of both buildings with Smith Street located between them. Infrastructure and road improvements are proposed throughout the project. Smith Street will be widened and have sidewalks and street trees. Sidewalks will be improved along all extents of the project with a wide sidewalk along Pendleton Street to help extend the pedestrian realm of the village and provide future connectivity to a trail that the county is working on. You will notice the additional parcel, AKA the Logan House, incorporated as open space to the rear of the left-hand building as shown on the slide. This is consistent with the previous request from council to add this property as a pocket park. As a legal note, however, this parcel cannot be added to the planned development at this point of the project, but the developer has indicated the intent to purchase this property and include it as part of the open space. The ordinance before you this evening includes language to ensure connectivity is provided between this parcel and the pocket park within the PD. With the open space and the addition of stairs and sidewalks behind the buildings, the project includes improved connectivity across these blocks from Saco Street to Traction Street. Next slide, please. Here is the conceptual landscape plan as prepared by Seaman Whiteside. The species and locations will be reviewed during the final development plan and the permit stage. You will notice street trees, landscape buffers, and other elements included across the project site. Next slide. And now we will look at the building changes. For these slides, on the following slides, the new design is shown on top and the original design is on the bottom. These are the buildings along Pendleton Street. The front buildings have been designed at 2 stories along Pendleton Street in order to help match the existing village commercial district. These buildings have distinct architecture from the rest of the project and are intended to extend the existing storefront stylings of the village. Behind the 2-story buildings, the project increases in height to 5 stories. Beyond these, and you will see on the coming slides, the building height has been reduced to 4 stories. So there are 4 units on the 5th story of what we're calling Building 1, or the smaller building, and there are 11 units on the 5th story of the larger building, or Building 2. Next slide. This is the project from the south. So imagine you're looking north. Saco Street is on the left, Smith Street is in the middle, leading up to the intersection with Lois Avenue, and Traction Street is on the right. The buildings here have been reduced from 5 stories to 4. This was accomplished by lowering the parking garage by a full level and removing units. The new density is approximately 214 units. We will cover density more later, but this is to explain how they were able to change to 4 stories. Also notice the updated architecture. The architects removed the white low country architecture at the request of the Planning Commission. The commission felt that the overall architecture was too busy and trying to appease too many people. The commission encouraged the developer to own the design and make the project their own instead of having so many competing elements. Staff and the commission believe the revised architecture is more cohesive. The rear elevations match the mill-like architecture, which is also used for the 5-story portion closer to Pendleton Street. As a reminder, this part of the project also includes the open space and the 2-story Morgan House, which is being relocated and restored as part of the project. Next slide. Building heights. There was a request for clarification on the building heights. Along the rear of the project, the building heights are as follows. And there you can see the new numbers of the building heights. Ranges from 61 feet 9 inches to 49 feet 9 inches. Next slide, please. Back to the front of the elevations along Pendleton. The building heights here have not changed from the original design. We have called them out on this slide. And the building heights range from 68 feet 6 inches to 71 feet 6 inches. For comparison, the Woven project compares to other developments in the city as follow. Kempton at 73 feet on Markley, 84 feet on Rhett, 7 stories maximum. Southern Side Senior Housing, 47 feet, 4 stories primarily, with 5 stories for one small section at the center of the building. Woodside Mill, 70 feet 10 inches, 5 stories max. Brandon Mill, 67 feet 6 inches for Pendleton Street facing side, 81 feet 10 inches for Stream facing side, 5 stories max. Next slide, please. This is the design along Saco Street. Here, you can clearly see how the building heights transition along the block with the majority of the building now 4 stories. This view also prominently features the modern color block design intended to reflect the artistic nature of the village. The colors vary across the side of each building. One entrance to the parking garage is included along Seco Street. Again, that is we're focusing on the top images for these slides. That's the version that the Planning Commission approved. Next slide. Here, we are looking at that same building from the Smith Street side. Again, you see the step backs and the 5-story portion along Pendleton with 4 stories as the project transitions back to the neighborhood. The garage entrance is about halfway down the building. Next slide, please. This is the second smaller building between Smith and Traction Street. To the left-hand side in this image is the part closer to Pendleton. While we are on this slide, let me call attention to the mural on that 2-story part of the building. This is the corner of Smith and Pendleton Street. The Planning Commission recommended removing the mural and instead providing more activation and transparency at this prominent corner where Lois Avenue and Smith Street intersect with Pendleton. Again, you see the transition, 2 stories, 5 stories, 4 stories. Next slide. Lastly, this is the design along Traction Street. There's a lot going on in this slide. The building mass here actually steps back for this whole middle portion to provide space for a swimming pool. The pool is not at street level. It is elevated 1 story. The 4-story part of the building is then set back along the entire length of the project. Also along this frontage, you have the retail incubator space that the developer stated would be leased at 50% commercial rates in the Central Business District. That's what was approved by the Planning Commission and is in the ordinance before you this evening. There are approximately 2,900 square feet for these retail spaces, which are visible along the base of the 5-story portion to the right of in this image. In the rear, the elevation actually reduces across the site, so this appears to be 5 stories. From the rear of the project, it appears as 4 stories with a basement. It still represents removal of the top floor in this area from the original design. Next slide. This view is along Smith Street, which will be widened, have curb and gutter, a curb lawn, street trees, and sidewalks. The commission was originally concerned with a canyon effect along Smith Street, but felt more comfortable after seeing the project renderings. The commission also observed that street trees can help reduce the effect of building height from the pedestrian perspective. The architect indicated that these trees are not shown at full maturity and will provide more relief as they continue to grow. On the left, about halfway along the building, you can see the entrance to the parking garage. Staff would request that wayfinding signage be provided for any public parking spaces that are provided if you were to approve this project. Next slide, please. Here is the view from Pendleton Street looking down Traction Street. Bar Margaret is on the left-hand side. You can see the retail commercial space along Pendleton Street and the retail incubator spaces heading down Traction. A rooftop patio provides additional activation at this corner. I will also point out how this illustration shows how the center part of the building is stepped back from Traction Street. The pool is located above ground level at this point. The applicant responded to staff and commission requests concerning this issue with the architecture. The mill-like style is the primary design that you will see on the 5-story portions of the project. Next slide, please. This rendering shows the front of the project located around the intersection with Lois Avenue and Pendleton Street. The first break is where Smith Street enters the project and leads into the neighborhood. The second break between the cream-colored and green buildings is a new public plaza, which provides relief in the building mass and serves as an amenity area for the project. Next slide, please. The applicant stated he intends to utilize a new affordable incentive recently adopted by Greenville County. With the incentive, the developer would make 20% of the total units affordable. At 214 units, this would be 44 units. Then within these units, the breakdown is as follows: 20% at 80% AMI, 60% at 60% AMI, and 20% at 40% AMI, which results in 9 units at 80% AMI, 26 units at 60% AMI, and 9 units at 40% AMI. The developer researched the currently affordable housing guidelines for Greenville County, which are updated by HUD annually, and presented these numbers at the Planning Commission meeting. The original application proposed 10% of the total units at 80% AMI. This revised application with the new affordability incentive represents an increase in the affordable housing component of the project. Because South Carolina law does not allow for inclusionary zoning, a plan development is one of the few opportunities you can include affordable housing in as part of the project. And this was a condition of approval from the Planning Commission. Next slide, please. The Woven project, as modified, was recommended for approval by the Planning Commission with conditions on November 29th. Next slide, please. The ordinance document and exhibits have been updated to reflect the deferral back to Planning Commission. Planning Commission's updated recommendation for approval and the updated plan development design documents. City staff prepared the list of amendments and conditions that are listed within the ordinance currently before you, which include the Planning Commission's conditions, staff comments, and applicable City Council conditions from first reading. And if we could go to the next slide, Megan, and just so they have time to read all that.
Shannon, if I may, just a point of clarification on what you just said. Are you suggesting that from the first reading in August, any items that were put forward then that were not replaced and covered by the Planning Commission remain?
That's correct.
Just to confirm that. Thank you.
And then if we could go to the next slide for the last comments. This is the ordinance that is before you this evening. You have the ability to approve with conditions or changes, or deny the application. At this time, I'm available for any questions or questions or comments concerning the project. Thank you.
Questions?
So I have a couple of questions that are technical questions, but they relate to not necessarily what's been in your presentation. So I'm happy to wait on those or go ahead and give my questions at the discretion of the mayor. I'll take that as a yes or no.
The other questions to Shannon? Well,
Okay.
You can go ahead.
I'm going to go ahead.
This is a chance to get.
And Shannon, if we have to pull up some people from staff, I understand. I appreciate you being here. The larger building, somewhere in our exchange, its linear footage is what, 345 feet?
I don't have the exact dimension in front of me, but I can get that for you.
All right, I see Austin nodding because one of the staff members got that for me.
We'll get it for you in a minute.
345 feet. Is that true, Austin? Yes? That's what's in the email. So 345 linear feet, and in the spirit of the game tonight, divide that by 3, slightly larger than a football field, longer than a football field. Okay. I do have questions on, and I asked you this by email. Tonight, we have on our item docket number 15D, which is talking about a 2/3 majority being required when a project does not pass the governing body. Had that item been approved and been in place at first reading, would that have applied at first reading? In other words, at first reading, this project was denied by the Planning Commission?
That's correct. They denied it at their July meeting.
And then it came to council and passed by a simple majority, but we have an item on the docket tonight that changes that to a 2/3. My question is, does that item tonight on the docket, would it have applied to this project?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So it would have been denied at first reading had that text amendment been in place at the time?
Yes.
Am I saying that right? Okay. Is Greenville Housing Fund participating in this project? in any way?
I can't answer that. That's a
Financially?
question for the developer.
Okay, I'll ask the developer. And then I do have some questions that I brought up at the last meeting we had on this regarding the micro retail.
Yes.
So I asked, how is that to be managed? The developer is asking, or is offering very generously, I think, to have 5 units at 50% of the CBD rates. So I asked that last meeting and I was going to get back some kind of answer. Is that something I need to ask upon the developer?
We would manage it through our economic development department, and we would ask for yearly income rolls and rent rates to confirm that it is in line with whatever is approved by council. So if it is a 50% rate of CBD, then we would be gathering the CBD rates, and then we would manage that through our economic development department. It would be similar to how we have people report to us on an annual basis through our community development department to ensure that they're meeting the guidelines for affordable housing. So it would be the same. We would manage that internally through our staff.
So I did spend some time with the developer. He was gracious enough to reach out. I apologize. I could not meet with him subsequently. I ran out of Friday and I didn't have any Monday either to meet with you. But he was going to offer a proposal on it for how that would work. When we met before Christmas, I think, or I don't know, it might have been since Christmas, Brian, I don't remember. You said several times 50% of the CBD rate, and you said twice when we met AA rate. And I subsequently asked staff, what does AA mean? Because forgive me, I guess I could have asked you, but I didn't. And my understanding is AA is sort of like the best, the nicest. You know, maybe we talk about Class A, Class B, Class C office space in Greenville sometimes, but AA is the best of the best. And by my opinion, that would be Camperdown. So I asked the question of staff, what is Camperdown rating? And what is the average rate in the CBD, expecting Camperdown to be an outlier? So the average rate in the CBD for rental rates came back at $23 a square foot.
That is to our best estimate,
To
yes.
our best estimate from
Usually-
OnStar. It's not OnStar, it's
CoStar.
CoStar.
It's CoStar.
OnStar is what's in cars.
Yeah.
I knew that. So it's 23 average, and if we think of Camperdown as the best of the best, we subsequently had that at about 30 a square foot.
30 to 40 is our best estimate.
30 to 40 a square foot. So then I guess I could make the presumption that today, a snapshot in time, this micro retail would be 20 a square foot. If it's 50% of Class AA, and Class AA in Camperdown is 40, that's 20. And yet I met with a developer, excuse me, not a developer, a business that currently rents in the village somewhere between 21 and 25, which, I mean, what I'm getting there is that they're already at 50% of downtown. So unless am I missing anything? Have I said anything incorrectly?
Well, I don't know about the last part but
I had a conversation with
the
them
rates
long.
throughout the village vary. And they go from what our best estimate, because we're not necessarily the developer.
That's all we've got.
That's right.
That's all
Our staff expertise is that the estimate in the village is anywhere from $12 to $14 a square foot, upwards though to the highest that we've heard or seen is $26 a square foot. So there's a wide variation within the village from what we can determine as staff.
Okay, and then some of the people that spoke, you know, saying that rent was the biggest component of it, I don't think this micro retail is going to help them much. Okay, the last thing that, you know, I got a very strong message. I do believe this to large degrees business versus residents. I mean, let's call it what it is. If you had to pare it down, it's business versus residents, and there were a lot of businesses that were really concerned. We need the traffic or I'm going to have to move my business. I think we had one business owner saying there's nobody on the streets, it's empty. So we looked at revenues, collective revenues of businesses in the village. So we can't look at individual businesses, but revenue overall in the village in 2019, when times were good, right, pre-COVID, was about 16 million. Annual gross revenues reported by the businesses just in the village.
Are you asking me to confirm?
Well, I got it in writing,
Yes.
so you can say, yes, I hear it, okay?
That sounds
So
accurate.
that was in 2019, and then COVID hit, and we all know what happened then. So COVID was 20 and 21, and we did have a realignment in the business, how you get your license and how that's calculated. Nonetheless, we still know revenues. I hope in 22 it's much better. I do for the businesses. I can tell you by our data in 2021, still coming out of COVID, it was 20 million. So from 2019 to 2021, the revenues by business type collectively grew by 4 million during COVID. A little quick math, because you know I love math. That's a 25% growth. So I
That is
think
what the
someone's
data
doing
reflects.
good there. I'm sorry?
I said that is what the data reflects.
That is what
yes.
our data reflects as a city. Okay, that's all I had for the questions.
Thank you. Other questions?
I have a number of questions. So what is, just so I can compare numbers, make sure I'm doing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, what is the average rate for office under the terms that we're using for this development in the central business district now, average?
So we looked at retail. We did not look at office, and the average rate is $23 a square foot.
All right, so that's the average. Do we know what the median is?
No.
And currently, what is the average same rate for the businesses in the villages?
From our best estimates, $12 to $14 a square foot.
So if we do a 50% of CBD rate, that's really not helping. I mean, basically, I can get that rate on my own, right? I mean, pretty much, right?
According to the data that we have available to us, yes.
So if we really want to give them a benefit, it would be more helpful to do a percentage of the market rates for the Village of West Greenville as opposed to a percentage of the Central Business District. Is that fair to say?
That is fair to say.
All right, the 214, that's not a hard 214, is it?
Well, that's what they proposed and that's what Planning Commission approved. Now, there's ways that you can deal with this. You can say it's 214 and nothing but. You can allow for a little bit of leeway as they start to look into the final development plan, which means that under the current code of the city of Greenville, a planned development cannot increase units unless you all have it within your ordinance as to a certain number of units that it may increase without coming before you. So if it is 214 and they want to go to 215, that's considered a major modification to the planned development, which is essentially the same as a rezoning. So you can, if that's what y'all state is 214 and nothing more, then if they want to change that, then it has to come back before this body as a major modification. Or you can allow for some leeway as they start to work within the final development plan up to a certain percentage. Or, those are pretty much your options. If they decrease the units, staff has always taken the approach, because it's not specifically spelled out in the ordinance, that a decrease in units is a modification that's a minor modification that staff could approve at a staff level. Because most of the time, people are not necessarily increased if a unit number comes down. They are concerned, and the community tends to be concerned if a unit number goes up. And so that's specifically called out in the land management ordinance as a major modification.
But mine, from what we read as we were going through, I think we put in a 10%.
That's right, and that's up to you all as to whether you think that's appropriate or not.
Okay, so we could be looking at either 214 or at most with the 10%, could be looking at 235.
That's exactly right.
Okay. All right, and no matter what that number is, it requires a 20% affordable housing.
Under the ordinances presented before you, yes, sir.
So if it goes to 235, then we're looking at 20% of that in affordable housing.
Yes, sir.
And my understanding is that that 20% would have to be broken into that same proportion from the MCIP or MICP.
Yes, sir.
All right, so, okay. Now, what happens currently if the developer applies for that county program but doesn't get it?
It's a requirement within the ordinance before you. So he would either have to provide the affordable units as set forth in the ordinance, if you were to approve it, or he would have to come back before this body and ask for a major modification to the plan development if he wanted to reduce the affordability percentage in any way.
Okay, and that's already set in stone, that's already done.
That's, and if you have passed the ordinance as presented.
Okay, All right, I mean, but I'm just trying to make sure I don't need to make an extra. Do I need to put an amendment in there that says that?
No, that was part of the condition from Planning Commission and it's in the ordinance before you this evening. They
And
have
there's
to meet the 20% requirement.
Okay, and there's no possibility that, under the current as it is now, the developer would have to do at least 20% affordable?
Yes.
Okay. Now, do we have anything in there which talks about the breakdown of units, particularly to make sure that the affordable unit breakdown is the same as the other units, and i.e., that if we're doing 70% two bedrooms in the rest of the units, there's also, in the affordable units, there'll also be 70% of that, there will be two bedroom and the like.
No, that is not currently in the ordinance. That would require an amendment.
Okay, do I need to get a commitment from the developer before adding that commitment?
I believe you can ask, but it's ultimately within the purview of this body to add whichever amendments you see fit.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Okay, now there are a lot of things that I like about this plan. There are a lot of things also that I don't like about this plan. And one of those things that I don't like is the mass and scale. And I have, along with staff, looked at some issues to try to create an illusion or at least optical effect, which hopefully mitigates that. And I think I asked you guys to do a mock-up of certain things. Were you guys able to finish that?
We were. We did that in, I think, about 3 hours today.
Sorry about that.
So
All right.
I'm not sure how great it is, but
Yeah,
here we
that's the
go.
first time I've seen this, but.
This is our staff working, so.
Okay.
This is the mock-up that my urban design team did today to show what a break in the building would be. So this is obviously the traction view shed viewpoint, and Councilmember Gibson asked our team to look at if there was a break in the first building as you come into the village, how that would look. And if you will notice right to the right of the existing Village West Greenville Plaza sign, there's a break where we built in a 15-foot pedestrian walkway. If we can go to the next slide. This is how that looks to see the break in the building as you can see it from the plaza, from the West Greenville Shopping Plaza. And we also removed the 5th story along the front at your request, Councilmember Gibson.
Okay. And I also asked you to look at the possibility of lowering on Saco Street and on the back of the complex, lowering that to 3 stories to create a better transition into that.
Yep, I've got 2 more slides.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
Look at
okay.
me, getting
So
ahead of
there is kind of what it would look like from Pendleton Street.
Okay.
With 4 stories, and then there is the view shed from the rear that has the 3-story in the back, and we took the liberty of adding a green screen to the top floor there to try to show what it would look like if you did a vegetative screen along the parking garage. This is my staff's best work in just a couple of hours with this request, so.
How does that affect the number of units?
Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea. That we did what we were asked to do in terms of a SketchUp model, and that's what's before you this evening. I would say that we took off the 5th story on both of the Pendleton Street viewpoints, and that obviously on building 1 was 4 units on the 5th story. On building 2, it was 11 units, so that would remove at least 15 units. I do not know what the rear change or splitting it would do to the total of units. I mean, we only had a couple of hours to try to respond to the request.
Have we ever gotten a demand from the developer for a minimum of units?
Not that I'm aware of. He started with 254, then it was down to 240, and now we're at 214.
Okay. All right.
So over the course of the project from July until tonight, there's been a reduction of 40 units.
All right. So, and I guess my last question is on the retail incubator space.
Yes.
Now, I know the whole purpose of this is.
Megan, can we go back to the other presentation when we can look at the conditions? I'm sorry, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilmember Gibbs.
I mean, the whole purpose of this is for us to try to create, I guess, I hope the purpose of us doing this is to try to create lower rent space to help businesses that need that.
Yes.
Is there anything in there in the mechanism of how we're dealing with that that would limit those spaces to businesses that have that are either anything that would build businesses that have smaller business incomes, smaller wealth resources, the businesses that actually need that type of incentive or would most benefit from that incentive?
There's not currently in the ordinance, no, sir.
So basically, the way it's set up now, Microsoft could come in from one of those spaces.
Possibly.
All right, I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick follow-up on Councilor Gibbs. So what you're saying is there's no, in terms of the businesses that could potentially go in the below market rate retail spaces, there currently exists no qualifications for who would.
You are correct. There are no qualifications. Like with affordable housing, obviously, we would review the income. Presently, there's no qualifications on how to enter into that incubator space.
Okay. Okay.
Is that to say it's unprecedented, or just hasn't come up in the consideration in the context of this project?
We've been researching it, our team has, and we know other communities are looking at different ways to do that. Michael's done a lot of research on this, but we're unaware of anything currently within Greenville or the surrounding areas. Doesn't mean we can't do it though, or find a way to do it. Just means there's not necessarily a model that we're aware of for that.
We, in an amendment, authorize staff to create qualifications that then the developer would have to abide by? Are we able to authorize you all?
You are able to authorize staff. We would have to work with, I would say we probably want to work with our team that wrote our recently completed economic development strategic plan to ensure that we are meeting industry standards, and obviously with our legal team to make sure we're within the legal purview to do anything of that nature. But that would be something that, yes, you could do, and then we could report back to you on it, obviously, as we know more information. I think we would want to work with our consultants that did our economic development strategic plan because they're subject matter experts. And I'm sure that because of their work throughout the country, they might be able to help us with something of that nature.
Shannon, do you know if Riverwalk is currently still, or River Crossing is still currently below market rate for the?
I don't believe that it is. I do not believe so. I think it has passed the minimum threshold of time. I can find out and
Because
confirm.
that might be a good model to look at as we're looking at nonprofits, as we're looking at incubators, as we're looking at various things that do meet some of the conditions that these guys are talking about businesses that need some help. So
we're open to any ideas.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions triggered by Councilmember Gibson's questions. The 10% unit possibility that's built into the current ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Where did that originate? You gave commentary about how that's handled oftentimes.
It was discussed a lot at Planning Commission, and so that was added to the ordinance to try to give a little bit of leeway because the unit count hadn't been set. But obviously, that's up to this body as to whether that's appropriate or not. I think that the idea is trying to, if once the plan development is approved, if it is approved, then it would go, a final development plan has to go back before the Planning Commission. And we're trying to make sure that the Planning Commission has the tools that it needs within the ordinance to work with at the final development plan stage, should we get to that point.
A second question for now. You were kind to mock up variations to the renderings.
you.
Showed one image that had the building broken up, or however you describe that, you know. My question for you is, what was an iteration of the building in that way looked at some point over the course of this process by the design review board or the planning commission?
No, this is staff plan, armchair architect.
Well, no, what I'm trying to say is I know this that you came up with today in 3 hours was, but during any stage of the review process over the preceding months, there was no conversation about this.
The planning commission did ask the developer to look at mass and scale and to address it. But in terms of breaking it up specific like this, that conversation was never had.
Okay, thanks.
And I may be able to give you some more information on how this came about. Should I do that?
Well, you asked him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Basically what I did was I tried to figure out a way where I talked to a lot of people about this. And one of the things that kept coming back from the community was the residents was that they'd like to see this project broken up into 4 buildings. Because of the need of the developer to have a parking garage wraparound model, that made that sort of impossible for the large building. So what I did do was I figured that if we can create a break between the smaller building, at least when you're looking at it from that side, across the shopping garage, shopping center, it will appear, at least give the appearance of the entire project being broken up. And then to accommodate the view from the other side, that's why I recommended that we drop that level down to 3 stories as opposed to the 4-story that it is, to create a transition and make that more pleasing as well. But the way this came up is I'm trying to figure out ways to make this thing work better.
That's helpful. It sounded familiar, so I couldn't recall if that had been evaluated previously at some point by somebody.
We looked at how to how to make connectivity through the property and look at trying to do a drive along the back, and that would have broken up some of the site itself. But as far as I know, recall, I don't remember this being discussed. In all fairness, the developer has not seen this. We have no idea how this would impact his architectural plans. This was us responding to a request of what would it look like if you were to put a break in the building.
Okay, all right. Meg Terry's here too with the Planning Commission. It's for Meg to come forward, make a few comments if you wish, or questions. Might start out with those comments that Mr. Gibson had about what was looked at, what's not looked at. You know, we had a lot of ideas floating around, but you all also looked at and made many suggestions, looked at many changes and made many suggestions. Perhaps you can kind of take us through that a little bit.
Sure. You guys be nice to me. I'm usually on that side. So, there was a lot of conversation at Planning Commission, and again, we thank the public for being there. It's such a big part of what we do, and hearing all the comments and feelings, and being in the business district of West Greenville is a big part of understanding this project. And we're only allowed really to look at what we have in front of us. So while I am an architect by trade, it's hard for me to put that into motion when we're sitting at Planning Commission, other than just to say, the big overarching concepts, which I think one of those actually created a better project out of this, which was to push it back to the architect and the developer and the applicant and say, make this your own. So, I would respectfully say, while I appreciate the move to separate the buildings, if that is something that you guys choose to request, I would let the architect do his job and come back and do that. And I won't comment on my opinion on that right now because it's not the appropriate forum. But what I will comment on is that this plan or this application sits directly in the node of the village. It is an identified node of Greenville 2040. It has its own plan itself, the micro plan. And these are the 2 documents that we generally used as we moved forward in our deliberations and our recommendations. GVL 2040 calls for affordable housing at 10%, at 80% AMI, and this exceeds that, as you guys have all discussed. It provides open space and some future connections. We actually added, had a lot of conversation about connections across the site, and the applicant added that connection from Traction over to Sago. So that was a positive we felt. There's been a lot of conversation about the retail, but it does, representative retail meets the DEI goals set forth as described in the recent economic development strategic plan through offering that price point variety. And thank you guys for getting down into that a little deeper. We don't have the purview to do that, and so we thank you. And of course, annexation is always something we talk about, and we know that that's a priority as well. A few things to address how this really sits beyond, above and beyond for a PD. It provides some spaces for the artists that are currently there at their current rate. The affordable housing goes over and beyond, as Shannon shared earlier, at the 40 to 80% AMI. The open space requirement with the public plaza on Pendleton, we felt like was a nice gesture, as well as the two-story facing Pendleton. That was something that even from the beginning we felt like was a nice feature of this that spoke to the existing fabric of Pendleton Street. One thing that we do feel like is important is the widening of the streets that are happening and the improvement of the streets that are happening around this particular development, as currently none of that improvement exists in these locations. Sidewalks, curb lawns, street trees, and how all that gets addressed in the public way. Again, there's just some additional pedestrian width on Pendleton for future pedestrian bike connections. There's some movement of the historic structure of the Morgan House and preservation. It's also repurposing and relocating 3 of the existing historic structures. One of the conversations which you've seen here as well is that we had a lot of discussion about the parking and making sure that there was public parking provided along with the required parking within, which we all know that the village is desperately in need of public parking. The architecture does exceed the multifamily design guideline minimums. And we at Planning Commission felt like that it even, as far as the building itself, had done a nice job of transitioning from the original application that we saw to where we are today. And we do feel like the Planning Commission felt that the facades of those retail areas in the front did honor the scale and the historic nature of the existing Pendleton Street vista as well. So one of the things that I did want to address today is that with the GVL 2040 plan, there are some changes that we need to understand within this plan that are going to happen, and that if that moves forward in a codified way through this new land management ordinance, there will be density, there will be changes in landscape of existing neighborhoods as it shifts the city from a suburban to a more urban feeling. And so while sometimes these things are hard, and it's hard for the Planning Commission, it's hard for staff, it's hard for everybody to understand that these changes help us keep moving forward and growing. And we need to take care of our residents, whether they are the lowest of income or the highest. And so being able to create these affordable housing moments that are in a bigger project in an area that could potentially have a grocer within a half a mile or a mile, whatever it might be, is important. And those services are important to that neighborhood as well. So the last sort of things I wanted to hit on is the mass and the scale of this, just to put it in context. I believe Councilwoman Dow mentioned the 325 or whatever it was, 45 feet, is that if you look at the block dimension happening in Pendleton Street, it's not a grid. It's not like downtown. You don't get the sense of a block or a mega block. It's just space. It's a street. And so what we want to understand is that this project actually helps create a little bit of that context at the street level and creates a line and a delineation of a business district. And yes, it is against something that is residential, and I don't think taking those down to 3 stories in the back is a bad thing at all. I think that helps just even more powerfully change that. Again, we had a lot of conversations with the developer, and he felt like that's what he could give, and so that's what we recommended. And there's a really good buffer zone as well with the park and the areas behind that. I think with that, that's really my conclusion of, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to try to answer that. But, you know, I just want to reiterate that this was considered under the things that we have to consider it with, which is the current GVL 2040 and the micro area plan, which states specifically a 4 to 6 story building is appropriate in certain catalyst sites in this area. And the Planning Commission deemed this to be a catalyst site location based on its intersection and its proximity in the village.
Meg, I have 2 questions. One,
Yes, ma'am.
the document you keep referencing, the Village of West Greenville, is an advisory document for the Planning Commission, never came here.
Right.
So
And
it's an advisory document, but it is not a visionary document like GVL 2040 is what I hear from staff. You had 1 no vote. When someone votes no on the Planning Commission, do they have to give a reason why?
No, ma'am.
Huh.
We ask sometimes if it's majority, if, you know, obviously to determine what the applicant would need to come back with. But if it's a 1 no vote, we typically do not ask.
Was a reason given?
I don't believe so. Was it, Shannon? No.
Is the person who voted no present?
Yes, she's right here.
Okay, I'd like to ask her what her no vote was based on, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council. My no vote that evening, after giving great consideration of the task that Planning Commission was given with different points to address and the concerns that you all had to put back on our table. I think the process was a little frustrating, a little arduous. It took a while because the way that it was orchestrated, I felt like sometimes even in this situation, you really want to have a good strategizing time to really put your thoughts and things into it in a better way, especially in a public setting. And even the information that I'm getting here tonight, there's a lot of things that I wish I could have privilege to being able to have those discussions. Meg did a fantastic job tonight being able to express that. And with that said, my no vote was based on the mass and scale.
Okay.
It was feeling how that positioned in that particular place, that everything, even though it's written in GVL 2040 and people feel like that is something that we can consider, doesn't mean that it's necessarily in every area that is a node. That was my reason for a no vote.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Mr.
Y'all are
Mayor,
tough.
I just was going to offer before Meg Terry, as the chair of Planning Commission, sat down, I just wanted to say to her and Commissioner Adams, thank you and your colleagues for all the work that you do, but particularly for the extensive work that was done in November of 2022 in a brief period of time, rather unexpectedly through the holidays. I know this is an important yet difficult from a complexity standpoint matter, and I think you've really done a great service. So, thank you.
Second that. Second.
Appreciate that very much. Okay, all right. Any other questions to them? Okay, any other comments by council members?
I do have a comment that I would like to make. That I've got a slight cold, so I've tried not to say anything very much, but as most of you know, I am the representative for the particular area. And it's easy for me to vote no. And the reason is, not one time did they come to the people in West Greenville and ask them anything. Everybody came up and talked about how they talked to you, they planned with you, but how would you feel if you put something next door, nobody asked you anything? That's what's been going on in the community. That's why it could be a great thing. People could have said this, the things the kids suggested could have been there a long time ago. Because the people are intelligent enough to tell you what they want. But they weren't considered. That is not government. That's why gentrification is there and a lot of other things is there, is because people just come in, don't take them as if they have any value, and just walk through the door. That's why I'm upset. And that's why I will not change my vote, because if my people are not that important to you, then I don't see you going any further with them. They weren't good enough for you to even have a meeting in their neighborhood. You had it somewhere else and it was too small. All I'm saying is that if we don't ever start valuing the people that we work with, and a lot of people who don't even live in the neighborhood say, well, you know, gentrification took care. It doesn't matter when it took place. It started really in the late 60s. But gentrification has been happening. But the thing is, for you to walk up and walk over people makes no sense to me. This would be a great project if it was on Lawrence Road. Why? It's got space. Now, my concern here is when the construction starts, when the mud starts moving around, the rain, the noise, knocking down the buildings, when you lose your parking spaces, you can't get into your house, I'm still gonna be the representative. And you won't call and you probably cuss me out, and that's fine. Doesn't bother me because I know I didn't do it. But what I am saying is that when the ribbon cutting started, I'm still the representative in the area. Whether there's good or bad, with or without the woven, I'm still going to represent West Greenville and the Brandon area. But what I want every developer to know, you can't just walk in. Look at your house. If you put it next to my house, oh, we would have had a problem a long time ago. Because I would have said that people are so kind in West Greenville. They think that people are going to help them out. And by the time they get to the information, they can't do anything with it. You've already bought everything. They can't even buy. Now, the value of property in West Greenville is so goddamn high. Some of the people now, if they ever lose their property, they can't get it back. Because the value has come in. If there was a concerted effort and we walked through it step by step and got away and got the people and figure out how we could put this. Because actually it didn't even have to be 2 big buildings. It could have been 4 or 5 if you did it right and work with the community. And I do appreciate one thing, that we will maintain the museum. I do appreciate that house will stay there. That does mean that we're going to stay there. But whether we win or lose tonight, I'm still going to be the representative. And I don't want anyone to ever come to West Greenville or anywhere else and think they can just walk in and take everything and don't say anything to the people who live there. How would you feel if somebody did that to you? That's the problem. This is as if, oh, it's going to be valuable. Yeah, it's going to be valuable because you got it. And I have said to everybody in the West Greenville community for years, we've talked about this, don't just sell your property to anybody unless you know what's going there and what they're doing. We thank you for whatever, for West Greenville, and for those of you who've been very conscientious and who fought the fight and do the battle. But we have to understand and we have to send a clear message. And my message is always going to be, and I said this and I did not change, and I've talked to the developer 2 or 3 times and told him, I'm not changing my mind. It's in the wrong place, baby. When there's people in Sacco Street, Traction Street, and all those other streets, when everything's blocked up, and you can go to your house, but they can't get in their yard. I want you to think about it. Thank you so much.
A number of amendments.
Any comments?
Are we prepared to offer some amendments now? Is that right?
Yeah,
Tom?
go ahead.
Okay.
Well,
All right. I'd like to offer an amendment. This is referencing in the document for Camilla's benefit in the updated Planning Commission recommendation, page 12. item number 3 that references the 214 units and the breakdown, and it allows for up to a 10% increase. I move to amend number 3 of the amendments and conditions by inserting the following before the last sentence, that 100% of all units over 214 shall be affordable following the 80-60-40 AMI breakdown. The gist of that amendment is, goodness knows, we have spent plenty of time dissecting this project. It started at 254, moved to 244, now it's at 214, so I think everybody's had a good chance to run their pro formas on this. I'm trusting that the pro forma has been run on 214 units, but the staff came up with a leniency to allow up to 10% more, which would be 21 more units. So my amendment basically states that any additional units above 214 must fit the affordability model. In other words, they must not be market rate, they must be affordable, because quite frankly, the only reason I've stayed in this game and spent so many hours as everyone else is trying to get to a yes on this thing is for the affordable housing component. It's the only thing that's kept me engaged, and I very much appreciated bringing. So if we're going to go up, we're going to have liberty to go higher than what has taken so long to get to. That higher in terms of unit mix has to be affordable, in my opinion. So that's the way the amendment reads.
Right, and that'd been discussed earlier too. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it unanimously. Okay.
I have a number of amendments. Let me start with what I hope are the easiest ones first.
Speak English now.
I move to amend, to add the following language to amendment number 3. The ratio of affordable units shall be proportional to the final unit bedroom mix. Any reduction in the total number of affordable units below 20% shall require approval of a major modification of the PD by City Council, end quote. And basically what that puts in the proportionality language, which ensures that to the extent that there are 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms throughout the unit, they are the same with the affordable. And it also ensures that for any reason, the number of affordable units falls below 20%, that the developer will have to come back before City
Yeah, I
Council.
second that.
Major
That
modification.
makes a lot of sense.
I think that's in the original, but I think that's still fine if you want to emphasize that.
Not quite that wording.
The proportionality,
Probably
Mr.
that wording,
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the proportionality is not in the ordinance.
Proportionality is
No.
not.
No, sir.
Okay. I know the planning commission discussed that, but okay, is there a second to that? I think we had a second. Okay, discussion on that.
I have just a brief discussion. I just raised this question. I'm supportive of it, but I want to be careful. Is there any possibility of unintended consequences? And let me clarify what I mean there. If we intentionally, out of sincerity of spirit, fix it, if there were any data points, trends, marketplace indicators that I certainly lack here on the spot that would suggest flexibility, particularly in these affordable housing units, which are particularly precious, I would not want to miss the opportunity to understand that before voting to fix it. So that's my question. I don't know if anybody has an answer. If the answer is no, I'm prepared to support it. If the answer were yes, I'd want to understand that before we take this step.
I'm not aware of any data which would indicate that the extent to which people in need of affordable housing changes from any other way. In fact, quite frankly, I know of a number of, in fact, anecdotally and experientially, my experience is that we have more families that need affordable housing and the larger units that are necessary than the single.
That's right.
units. So if we were going to go in the other direction anyway, it would really probably be more of mandating a higher percentage of larger units than small ones.
Well, that's sort of in line with what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Flexibility to be able to adapt and respond to what we understand is the biggest need in Greenville, given the relative preciousness of these units.
Yeah, the only thing the thing that I'm trying to most protect against is that we approve this, it gets built, and whether the original developer sticks with it or not, or he sells it to another developer who gets it, and then all of a sudden we end up with 44 studios. That's affordable units.
I mean, would there be a way forgive me for spitballing on the fly, we do sometimes, to set it as proposed via amendment, but maybe through a minor modification, if there was a compelling reason to consider, not radically, but maybe slightly altering the mix, staff would have the discretion to entertain that?
I want to say, if we're going to change it, if it's going to come to council to change it, we'll be able to modify it just the way we need to modify it.
Again, my whole intent is not to move away from it, but is to retain flexibility, adaptability, just to ensure that those needing these units can maximize the utility of it.
What is staff's position?
What's community development?
I don't think I have anybody from CD. I don't see Monique here this evening. I mean, if you want to allow for some flexibility, then you can obviously leave it to staff and we can report back to you. Or if there's a modification within a certain percentage, that could be considered a minor modification, if you want to let us know that. Otherwise, if you add it into the ordinances, the proportionality must be maintained, and they do not maintain that proportionality, we would consider that a major amendment to the plan development, and that would require a modification to be approved by this body.
That's right.
Okay, so basically,
Because we get
if
the
for whatever reason they fall below, it's gonna come back before us anyway.
Mm-hmm.
As the amendment's currently made, yes.
But would that come up between now and the final development plan?
More than likely not. I think that's probably where they would determine it, because that's when they're getting ready to get into, our design drawings and then construction drawings. It may not even come up until permitting stage.
Can we explore that option?
Explore the option to do
The
that.
option of leaving at the discretion of the design review board.
Well, it would be the
Don't
planning
wanna leave-
commission.
Yeah, I don't want to leave it. design.
No.
It needs to stay with, if we're gonna do any type of thing like that, as far as like allowing the flexibility, it needs to remain with staff.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's up to this body. We serve it, obviously.
I personally am not. I would be fine with leaving that discretion to community development
Mm-hmm.
for a minor modification for a deviation of no more than 20%.
Mm-hmm.
That's smart.
Should we, so with that in mind, I would amend my motion to amend to state the ratio of affordable units shall be proportional to the final unit bedroom mix. Any reduction in the total number of affordable units below 20% shall require approval of a major modification of the PD by city council to the extent that the developer desires a deviation from the proportionality requirement. Discretion to do so will remain with community development for a deviation not to exceed 20%.
Second that.
Okay, I can second, I make second to that amendment. So I'm seconding the second amendment here.
Fair enough. Yeah, that was good. You drank your V8 this morning.
I ate my Wheaties.
Yeah.
Get a motion to second then?
Yes, it's been second
Yeah,
twice.
further discussion, clarification on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. Ayes have it.
All right, next amendment, and hopefully this will be easy as well. Prior to, I move that we add to the following, to number 9. Prior to submission of a final development plan, the applicant shall conduct a community input meeting for the design and layout of the pocket park.
Oh, second for that one. Yeah, because I was worried about that pocket park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, motion and a second on that. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, ayes have it.
Another, which I hope will be an easy one, I move to amend, to add the following language to number 11. Quote, the applicant shall work with the city to design and prepare wayfinding signage to guide and direct visitors to nearby attractions, end quote. And the purpose of that is to allow us to prepare more signage, to get more traffic to that area, but also to make sure that cost is borne by the developer as opposed to the city.
Okay,
Now-
so should it say that?
Yeah, it says work with. It doesn't say pay for.
Big
difference.
Prepare, yeah.
right.
And it's so
To
expensive
prepare
to
and-
develop.
So can we get to 11? We're driving the same.
Yeah.
What now? I'm sorry.
We got it
Look.
printed.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was trying to read along number 11.
Oh,
Can you
no, no,
add to
no,
it?
my fault.
No, that's not your fault. I knew they were trying.
I would say provide instead of
Okay.
prepare.
Then
Well, but then
May I-
that was the city
may I amend
designs
my-
and provides.
motion to amend?
Is this the one under signage?
Yes.
Okay,
You just-
please. I know it's a pressing.
Yeah, it's not
And
necessarily an
I would
amendment, it's
request to amend that.
an editorial change.
Unanimous consent, okay?
It's an
Thank you.
it's an editorial
To
change.
add the following as number 11, the applicant shall work with the city to design and provide,
Wait,
back up. The applicant shall work with the city to design, prepare, and provide wayfinding signage to guide and direct visitors to nearby attractions, end quote.
Okay, prepare,
I need a second.
Second.
to design, okay, and to provide. Okay.
Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
All right, next amendment that I would request. I would ask that we rewrite number 5 as follows. Quote, "The retail incubator space shall be deed restricted to 50% of average market rates for the central business district or 50% of average market rates for the village of West Greenville, whichever is lower. Compliance shall be monitored through the economic and/or community development departments. Economic and/or community development department shall also research and develop standards to ensure that tenants for the space will be limited to businesses that most need and will most benefit from the reduced office space rent."
I've got a
I
point.
have language.
Oh, you do? Okay,
That might help.
all right.
Yeah,
It might
right.
not help.
Let's see what your language is.
Are you talking about?
Amending his amendment.
Okay, well, you had that
Your,
discussion.
your editorial change,
Amending his amendment. Basically, what I'm getting at here is, and I'll read mine and you can, you're the attorney, so you can help me out here. But mine was to, as a part of that amendment, to authorize, and I sent this over to the attorney too, but you're an attorney too, to authorize staff to create qualifications consistent with nationwide practices, and with appropriate consultants and industry experts by which a business would qualify to enter an agreement with the developer to rent the below rate retail space.
That works for me.
wait a minute, I have a problem with that
Oh,
because you talk about the nation, I mean, we're not gonna get West Greenville in there. It
What-
needs to be something that has a relationship to our community.
I'm gonna blame the city attorney who tried to help me with that.
I think what he's.
We can get away from that, that's fine.
No, the only thing I'm saying is that the reason I supported that is because it talked about the local neighborhood community where you focus your work in there. So when we put in the national, I'm saying that's getting a little bit away from.
No, that's fine. So basically what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to authorize staff to come up with qualifications by which a business would qualify to enter into an agreement with the developer or the owner so as to avoid Microsoft, I know that's an extreme, but to avoid businesses that wouldn't need below market retail space.
Aren't you just suggesting some benchmarking to see what other methodology has been employed?
I was, but I'm not wed to that language at all. I just wanted the opportunity to try to help Counselor Gibbons.
No, I appreciate that. Because I have no idea how to word this one.
To authorize staff, just basically what I'm saying is come up with the qualifications that would make sure we've got the renters in there that you'd want and not in terms of need and not someone who is able to pay.
And maybe outside the ordinance language, you're encouraged to benchmark as you see fit to understand what's out there.
We can do the qualifications. I think I would want to know if you want staff to set what you think is the appropriate rate, or if you would like to give us a percentage, because as we discussed tonight, market rates amongst the throughout our community vary.
Yeah.
And
I'm
I
not
mean,
talking about rates.
okay, just
What I
the
was talking about
qualifications.
qualifications.
I think staff feels comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with us
Council
setting the
Gibson's
rates.
got the rates.
Okay,
Yeah, what I'm,
got it.
what I'm proposing is average, either the average, 50% of the average of the central business district, or 50% of the average of the market rates for the village of West Greenville. 50-50.
50. Yeah.
And whichever is lower.
Okay.
And the reason why I have whichever is lower is if for whatever reason, market rates in the village skyrocket to where they're in excess of central business district, I want the people who get those units to get the most benefit that they can.
Okay.
I have a question on that. There's
ma'am.
nothing in any of this language or discussion that I've heard that forces any turnover of those. So I know in all the public comment, there were multiple people who said they were artists. There was a barbecue guy, although I don't know if he was going to get one of these. So if this is meant to incubate and launch them, what's to stop it from you have an artist that meets the qualifications, signs a 5-year lease, and after a year, their revenues have grown by 25%, which is the pattern in this area. Well, they no longer really need it, but they're taking up that space.
Well, I think that that's the opportunity for us to weigh in, for staff to weigh in, with Shannon on what these qualifications would be.
Well, I'm just saying, unless we cap the length of, like, there are people sitting in Poe Mill with a 6-year lease. They're paying too much, best I can tell, but they're in their lease.
I think there are a lot of wrinkles that all we're doing is authorizing them to come up with qualifications, and then in the process of them coming up with qualifications, make sure we're having these conversations.
I sort of view it as the terms and conditions of this program that is rather unprecedented, but we want to see work like a dream. I mean, screening, qualifications, how it works.
Well, that's what I asked for at the last meeting and I didn't get it. So again, my impression is if we don't have it written down here, this soft language will not be anything to hold to.
I'm sorry.
Well, what can we do that
Shannon has it. Let Shannon.
Sorry, Shane, go ahead.
What were you asking for that you are?
No, the last meeting I asked for the developer's plan.
Oh,
And, now we're writing the plan the way we see it, but unless it's detailed out in this ordinance, I think we have to admit those babies are gonna rent for the best that he can get for them, and if it's tailored to a certain median, great. I'm just saying you could tailor it to that, and somebody's business does great as all these others have,
All
and
right,
then
so
they're taking up the space.
So to Councilor Dow's point, if we authorize staff to come up with this, is there a binding mechanism by which they have to adhere, the developer? Does it have to come back before this body?
well, you could give staff the purview to come up with a set of guidelines looking at peer cities that have handled other economic development incubators. We've had the opportunity to meet with, and I won't even say the name of the city because I don't know if it's
Comparable, yeah.
comparable. But we have had the opportunity to meet with other retail incubator success stories in the country. And we could do that. We could bring back the plan to you all for concurrence. I mean, the PD is what becomes bonding.
Mhm.
So whatever you put in the plan development is what becomes bonding. And so if there is a specific, benchmark or something that you're trying to reach, I would say that we would put it in the plan development because that's what we will use to make sure that all of the conditions of the plan development are met as we go through the final development plan stage, the permitting stage, and then also when they have to submit the information to us on an annual basis.
It seems to me where it says compliance should be monitored through the Economic and Community Development Departments and put into the plan development.
That's right.
Agreed upon details should be put into the plan development, just put it in there.
We could have the plan, we could do it and have the plan approved through the final development plan, but the final development plan goes to planning commission. It doesn't come before this body.
Councilmember Gibson, just to clarify if I may, so what I'm hearing you say, correct me if I'm wrong, you're seeking to establish the rate parameters, right? I mean, the lesser of the 50% of CBD or West Greenville, number one.
Yes, sir.
Number two, seeking to charge, well, either 2 or 3, but to fix those rate terms to a program that doesn't exist today, but needs to be developed. And number 3, charging the city staff to come up with the qualifying factors and criteria and the terms and conditions which will make that program run like a dream. Is that pretty much what you're after?
That sounds like Chinese arithmetic. But yeah, what I'm trying to do actually is I'm trying to make sure that we have something in place that contemplates and considers what the qualifications need to be so that we ensure that the types of businesses that need this program the most are actually getting the benefit of it.
Yeah, and then to
that-
Councilmember Dow's point, how it works over time, because if
Yeah,
if
and
that
like I
changes.
say, this is not something that I think we're going to get right tonight, but we can create enough of a framework with hopefully enough flexibility that it can change and evolve, and because we've never done this before, which is what, and this, we've never done this before. So we're there. To expect us to get it absolutely right tonight is just not whatever. But what I want to do is I want to create the framework that allows us to consider it. And I'm fine with creating enough flexibility in it so that it can evolve over time. But I want to make sure that is a consideration that is looked at in this program. Does that make sense? Okay.
One concern for me is the moving target of what rates are. We don't know what the median rates are right now. And I think you threw out in the village, it's $12 or something. So is a $6 a square foot rate feasible even? I don't know. So that's why maybe we should refer back to community development and economic development to set those parameters for us and come back to us. Can we do that?
The problem is I don't know how we do that.
You could put language in the PD, I believe, Miss City Attorney, that requires that the economic development plan for both qualification and rate structure be presented to you within 90 days.
I will say this, I don't see it as our job, especially on this item, to say how much profit is made on each of those units. You say, is it reasonable? I say, this project came to us with the bells and whistles are affordable housing, public parking, incubator space for micro retail. I met with the developer. He was crystal clear, 50% of AA rates in the CBD. That's a number he's got in his head, and I respect that. And I dare say they're getting that and better now in the village. So for us to tie it to the village rates, ties it, because that's the comparable. It's not my job or anybody's job that I see other than developers, to decide what's reasonable for rent on that. The message has been, I'm giving this to you, West Greenville. I'm giving you these micro retail spaces. So I don't really, I'm not really sure that's our purview. And I'm concerned about kicking this stuff down the road again. I think what we walk away from tonight is what we walk away from. And I think everybody is ready for closure on this one. So with that, I would ask for Councilmember Gibson's rewrite number 5 as follows. What you said, the only thing I heard you say that's different from what's written here is you said average, and it says here median, and those are two different things.
And the reason why I
Really
changed the average is because we don't have the numbers for median, but we have the numbers for average.
We have the numbers for average. Yes.
When I asked her, I said, do we have the median numbers? She's like, no, we don't have.
To the best of our ability.
Then she gave me the average numbers.
So are you going to include include authorizing staff to come up with qualifications?
Yeah. Does anyone have better language than what I have on that?
Or what I came up with?
What would you come? Remind me.
No, I don't know.
Would it be, do you want to ask the owners of the property, the developer of the property to comment?
Say again? I don't mind at all. I mean, I just want to, If he has a recommendation on language, I'm fine with considering that. But I want to make sure that we have something in place where that's being adequately, that is a pillar of this program. So if, the language that I came up with for that part of it was community development and economic development shall research and develop standards to ensure that tenants for the space will be limited to businesses that most need and would most benefit from the reduced office space rent. If someone has better language than that, I welcome it. Okay. All right, then my proposed and requested amendment is as follows. Rewrite number 5 as follows. Quote, the retail incubator space shall be deed restricted to 50% of average market rates for the central business district or average market rates for the village of West Greenville, whichever is lower. Compliance shall be monitored through the economic and/or community development departments. Community development and/or economic development departments shall research and develop standards to ensure that tenants for the space shall be limited to businesses that most need and will most benefit from the reduced office space rent. Is that workable for you? Okay.
Second, I think we already had a second, but in case you need
to,
to.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments, questions to anyone? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? No. I just don't think it's workable.
All right, now we get to the amendments which deal with the visuals of the property. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to just say what the amendments are and then explain what my reasoning for having them, for requesting them. I move to amend the amendments and conditions as follows: to strike the last sentence of amendment number 1 and replace it with the following. In addition, the project shall be further modified as follows. The 5th floor portions of both buildings along Pendleton Street shall also be removed. The top floor shall be additionally removed from the building 1 along Seco Street and from the rear portion of the building abutting the new pocket park. Building 2 shall be modified to include a building break to provide pedestrian access between Smith Street and Traction Street. And any portions of the parking garage that are visible due to the removal of units shall be concealed with architectural or vegetative screening, end quote. Now, I need a second first, I guess.
Second.
All right, so the reason why I've done this is, like I said, I talked to a lot of people about this project, including the developer, a number of times. And the thing that most came up with the people in the neighborhood was questions about the mass and scale of it. The obstacle which most came up with the developer was the need for a parking garage wrapped by the building. So I met with Jeff Randolph. Jeff and I talked about some things. He gave me some options as far as certain things, and then based upon those options, I came up with this. I believe that 4 stories along Pendleton Street is more than sufficient. And I will tell you that if you come up Lower Street and you're looking at this project, if it has 5 floors, it is going to look humongous. Because the angle of Lower Street, when you're coming up it, it comes up like this. And if you're sitting at that light and you're looking at that building, I'm telling you, the optical effect of it will be overwhelming. I also asked the top floor be additionally removed from building 1 along Seco Street. That takes it down to 3 stories. And the reason for that, and also the top floor from the rear portions of the entire building. And the purpose of that is to try to create more of a transition from the single family housing or the townhomes that are there into the 4-story parking garage and remainder of the buildings, including the extremely large building. I believe that 3-story transition will help, and apparently I think Ms. Terry agrees. I've also asked that building 2 should be modified to include a building break and provide pedestrian access between Smith Street and Traction Street. And the reason why I requested that is because a number of people in the community asked that the buildings be broken up because they are concerned about the mass and scale. But because of the developer's need for a parking garage, it makes it almost impossible. It makes it impossible to divide that particular building up and still maintain the need that he has for the parking garage. So rather than do that, what I propose is to break up the smaller building, which will create an illusion that the entire complex is broken up. I'm not so much concerned about the what's happening between the two buildings, because they're going to be two buildings looking at each other. But that is why I've asked for that. And then I also understand that once you drop that level to 3 stories, in order to maintain that parking garage, you're going to have parts of it that are going to be revealed. And so that the neighbors and the city members are not looking at an exposed garage that is jutting out from this building, I've asked that the developer be required to conceal that with architectural or vegetative screening. So like a green screen would be great, which is basically like live vegetation that whatever, but something that conceals that so that the neighborhood and the city is not having to look at an exposed parking garage. I believe that these amendments that I've requested, I believe they substantially make a much better looking development than what we have right now.
Any question, discussion on that?
Yeah, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned that after the commission has approved the plans, that council is moving into the architecture design realm. And I just don't think we have the qualifications as a council, just say, let's get rid of a floor, let's put a cut. I just don't think that's realistic. And I don't think that's something we should require from the developer.
May I respond to that?
Nicely.
Of course I will.
One response.
Well, maybe I should wait till everybody gives their comments and then just give one big response. Let's do that.
Okay.
I mean, when we make decisions about how tall certain buildings are, we didn't have any more skills there than we have now. So I'm just saying, nothing has changed. I still just say I don't like 4 stories. It doesn't matter. And I think in terms of architecture, I don't think necessarily that Kenneth is becoming an architect. But if you stand there and look at buildings, you know what you like and what you don't like. And if a particular building, like I said, if there are buildings that people are not going to be able to see the sun because the building is so tall, surely removing 1 floor wouldn't hurt.
Mr. Mayor, the proposed amendment triggers a question, potential concern for me. I hadn't met a person in all my conversations that absolutely loves the proposed mass of this project from start to present. But my question, which I don't know if anybody can answer on the fly, is what would be the consequential impact to particularly the affordable housing units found within the proposal as it currently stands with these types of floor modifications? Eliminate the 5th, reduce it to 3. I'm concerned more about affordable housing units than I am the other non-affordable housing units. So several of our speakers are in the public session comment who are certainly by their credentials more qualified than I based on their professional livelihood, reiterated the comment that with the density brings to you, advancement on your affordable housing goal. And so I just want to understand the sensitivity there.
And I agree with Ms. Brazington's comment on that.
I want to say that the Greenville 2040, I couldn't understand why everybody was so excited, saying they worked with it. That only allowed you to have 30 units per acre. This sucker had 90 units per acre. So I'm saying now all of a sudden, I'm just saying there's something, we're talking out of both sides of our mouth, and one day is 90, next day is 30 units an acre. And that's the problem. I think that we can change this to make it, if it's lower, it may work, because 240 units driving down Seco Street, I don't see it.
Mr. Mayor, is there a way, can the developer somehow offer insight on this?
Sure. I think that's a pretty core question to be asked, since the number of units do speak directly to density, which speaks directly to the affordable housing component. Well, good evening.
Mayor, members of council, I'm Brian Scheck, the applicant. Have with me Matt Delaney. He's an architect with Housing Studio, and Nick Myers, our land planner, civil engineer with Seaman Whiteside. So happy to answer any questions.
I don't mean to intrude on Councilmember Gibson's amendment, but I think the question becomes, to what extent can we predict with the exploration of changing the height and mass of this building, what would the trickle-down impact be on units, particularly the affordable housing units? The proposed amendment, as you heard, reduces fifth floors and steps it down to the third floor on the back of Sacco Street. So do you have a reaction to that in terms of your knowledge of your project and what it might do to the units you put forward and received approval by the Planning Commission on?
I do. I appreciate that, Councilman. And I want to thank Councilman Gibbs for giving me a copy of this as he walked into the chamber tonight. So I've been trying to make notes. Matt, our architect, who's been designing this project since it was 254 units, and then we offered 240, and then went through the 3 meetings of Planning Commission, became 214. I think an overall thing that we have to address, and I believe the chairman of the Planning Commission noted it, there's a nexus of us being able, any developer, being able to provide affordable, not just at the 10% goal that's in the 2040 plan, but to go to 20% that's in the county, multi-county industrial park incentive. There has to be that complement, that nexus between the density to be able to give the affordable. This would represent at least a loss of 35 units additionally. So we started at 254. We offered 240 by taking off a rail off the back. We got through the Planning Commission by taking off the vast majority down to 4 stories or 4 over a basement on Seco Street, 214. So this would be taking us down to 179 units. And there's a point where we trip a wire and we lose economic viability of the project. So I guess the answer to the question you asked the developer to come up here is you lose 100% of them. If we can't make it work, you're going to lose 100% of what used to be 50-something units. Then it's at 214, it's 43 or 44 units. But if we can't make it work to attract a lender, to attract investors, to provide a yield, and if you put it in this context, I know a lot of folks have just talked about fat cat developers and all this. Just think about how your 401k or your IRA is invested, your retirement account that you're counting on to live. These are the same kind of folks that are all rolled up who become the investors in institutional projects like this. And they have yield expectations. So when we start designing from the dais, with all due respect, we start to make things not economically viable, project doesn't happen, and none of these public benefits can happen. The parking, the affordable housing, the open space, everything that we've strived to put into Woven. So with all due respect, that's my response. Happy to have these resources here available to you to get any greater detail.
Is the idea of the Traction Street building having a break in the building? I mean, again, I agree. We can't make any decisions tonight based with the architecture and such, but it's still a very worthy concept, I think, to explore. Especially, how you divide the building, but you do have an opportunity on Traction Street site to push the building back a little bit more. And I just wonder if that's something you might want to say, at least you could look at as we go forward in this, because this isn't going to happen tomorrow anyway. If this project is approved, it's going to be quite a long time between development. But of all the things Mr. Gibson talked about, I think that's the one that certainly appeals to me anyway. I feel like on the height issues, I've always been concerned about that, but I also know this from urban design. It's about the pedestrian experience. And as long as that pedestrian experience is looking at 2 or 3 floors, it works just great. It almost doesn't matter how tall it is above that. That's the reality of real urban design in real cities across America. And you did that here with the 2 stories. I think with the Planning Commission in the very beginning, really pressed that button on that. You got to have 2 floors only along Pendleton Street. So, because that's what you'll experience. So I'm okay with that. Whether it's 4 floors, I'm just glad I'm glad it mostly is 4 now. I wish it was more 4. But I also feel like, I wish it were more 4. I know this from across this United States as people struggle with affordable housing projects. You have to provide extra density to get affordable housing. I know that. And everyone who's in this field, and the people who spoke tonight are actually working in the field on this, they know that too. It doesn't happen any other way in New York and Chicago and Atlanta, Greenville, and places. You got to almost have a little bit of an ouch to get the affordable housing. But if it's that important to you, you try to get the private sector to do it. And so with some degree of an ouch, if you will, I appreciate it. It's come mostly down to 4. I wish it were more 4, but I do understand what the density issue and how important it is. We want really what is pretty much an astounding example of affordable housing. All that said, if there were a way to divide that top building, I wish you would look at that, because I think that's something where it doesn't affect the units. It's just about rearranging things, if you will, and providing a break in there. So
I've got a
I put
question
that
for
forth to you. I just can't tonight design something and say, oh, yeah, go do that.
So do we need to defer?
No.
No.
All right, so let me get it straight.
I don't think anybody wants to.
If we lose 35 units, you still have 179, right?
No.
That's my math.
Say again?
That's my math.
It's 179. So you got 179, it takes our affordable housing down to 36 units, right? So we lose 8 units, but we get an experience which may be easier on the eyes and much more amenable to the community.
My point, Councilman, I'm sorry if I didn't make it clear, is that I fear that we are going to a point to where the whole project's not economically
So you're saying we
viable.
can't-
So we won't have any units because we won't have a project.
All right, what makes it, what are the considerations, since you brought that up? What makes it viable for you? What are the considerations that you have in determining whether or not this project is going to be viable? Is it just the cost, or is it your ability to sell it to another investor?
Yeah, so I want to thank, go back and look at my notes. Not met this gentleman, but he came up and spoke eloquently about everything he's doing. Mr. Mario Brown, native of Greenville, worked with Greenville Housing Fund, Front Porch, and is on the board of Homes for Hope. Appreciate his comments if he's still here. A 2x4 and a brick cost the same thing for an affordable unit as they do for a market rate unit. That's just a reality. So construction costs have only gone up. Interest rates have gone up 6 times since we signed the application for this project in April. So all that factors into a cost. Everything essentially, just simple math, ends up with a return on cost, which generates a yield to an investor. Those folks I asked you to think about with your own retirement accounts. That's who.
So before you get too far, so let me understand this. The reason why you don't think you can afford it now is because interest rates have gone up 6 times?
There's multiple factors. Construction costs continue to rise. Interest rates is a huge cost, has gone up 6 times. And we've done nothing but take units away.
At the beginning of this process, when interest rates were lower and construction costs were lower, would you have been able to afford to do 179 units?
Couldn't do that, Matt. I'd have to.
Okay,
with all due respect, put them into my pro forma, but we know that even at 214, we're stressed.
Say again?
As we discussed over coffee, even at 214, we are very stressed right now. So this just.
But if interest rates went down, you could afford that, correct? I mean, if interest rates sufficiently went down and construction costs sufficiently went down, you would be able to afford that,
With all
correct?
due respect, when we were at 254, we were hanging on 240 to take the back of the building off to step down per the concerns of the neighborhood to create more of a buffer and more of a setback and more of a step back. That was going tight. And then when this got referred back to the Planning Commission, and it became very clear that some major changes needed to happen to the design, and we took off largely a floor on both sides. Just to answer your question, Councilman, it made it. We've already entered into economic unviable mode to where we need the rates to come back. 179, just candidly, will have the effect of, whether intended or not, killing the deal.
So that we can get out of a decent hour. I don't quite understand this. So when you were at 254, you were barely able to afford it. Interest rates have gone up 6 times. Construction costs have gone up considerably. You're down to 179 units. But today, with all of those things that have gone in the opposite directions, you're still able to afford to do this at 214.
It's still stressed. It's still stressed. It's still putting stress on it. And it's not a linear equation because they're fixed prices. The land's a fixed price. Construction's going up. It has the net effect of increasing the cost per unit. So,
but when will you actually start building this thing? If we approve this tonight.
By the end of the year.
Say again?
By the end of the year.
By the end of the year. So 11 months or so. That correct?
Yep, could be sooner. Could be 8 months.
So we're talking about 11 months. In 11 months, can interest rates go down? Can construction costs go down? Can't this get to a point where you could afford to do this?
It could, but we already are that stressed at 214 units. This is just,
So basically what you're telling me is you don't really know if you can afford it or not.
I can tell you right now, we couldn't afford this project at 179 units.
But you don't know whether or not in 11 months, when you actually start breaking ground, whether or not you're going to be able to afford it.
Couldn't tell you what the Federal Reserve is going to do, or if we still
All
have
right.
this sort of unprecedented inflation.
So we could approve it at 254, and there's a chance you might not be able to afford it.
I can't predict what the rates and the inflation is going to do. So,
All right. Does anybody, because I want to respond to any comments anybody, the council has.
Nope, that's about it.
All right, so on the developer issue, saying that we are not developers, as Councilmember Fleming said, we do it all the time. The whole benefit of us doing a PD is that we're able to make those types of decisions. We limit buildings all the time. We say you can only build at this height all the time. We say you can build up to this height all the time. We put all kinds of restrictions on projects in PDs, and we do it all the time. And there is nothing about this project that makes us less qualified to do it than we've done it in all those other times. The second thing is this, on the affordable unit issue. Yes, we go down about we go down from 44 to 36 units. We lose 8 units. But for those 8 units, we end up with a project which is not going to be as nearly as much of a blight for the community that resides around this project as what we're going to do in order to try to for some reason that I cannot batten down, that we need to keep this thing at 214. There are no numbers that I've seen that support a need to keep this thing at 214. There are no considerations or facts, hard facts that I've seen that require this to be 214. There is a whole lot of stuff regarding interest rates and changes in construction costs, but quite frankly, the arguments don't hold water, because if it was a struggle at 254 and interest rates and construction costs have gone up and the units have gone down, it makes no sense that he would be able to afford 214. So obviously, there's another issue at play. Now, I believe that other issue at play is that this is an institutional project as opposed to a local and boutique project. This is a project that the developer is going to take, and he's looking at not just building it, but being able to sell it to somebody else who lives out of town who's going to come in and run it. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that business model. But for this particular site, we cannot be bound by the desire to sell to some other out-of-towner when it comes to building a project that looks right and fits on that particular site.
Okay, thank you very much. All righty, we have the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. Opposed to the amendment, raise your hand. Thank you. The amendment is defeated. All right, do we have any other amendments or anything else? Anybody other comments people want to make? Okay. I just want to say on my part that the process has been lengthy, and all of us have been very engaged, and I really appreciate the comments that have been made. Some of the best remarks ever to be made in this council on both sides. Letters and remarks have been on both sides, by the way, more perhaps than people realize, because we get people feeling strongly on both sides of this thing who live in that area as well as work in that area. The scale and mass issue I just mentioned a minute ago, it does concern me, but I also go right back to the fact that the Planning Commission, our professionals, we sent it back to them. I think they're persuasive that they got it at least close to being right and being mostly right. We would like a better project. Sometimes we would, but the pedestrian experience, I think, is still going to be a good one on the street. Don't need to say a whole lot more about that, because it really, with me, goes back to one thing and one thing only. When this project was first proposed, we were looking at this whole neighborhood and seeing a trend that was very disturbing to us. We've done a lot of work on affordable housing on West Greenville on the city side, but as things have developed on the county side, mainly county side, we see where this is heading. It's heading to a suburbanization. Units are suburbanized, expensive. We have already in the pipeline, everybody knows this, 55 units of very expensive housing getting ready to be built adjacent to this site. Adjacent to this site, 55 more townhomes, priced around $600,000, $700,000. 2 different projects. We have the Brandon Mill, which was a great thing, except one thing, it's gated. They built the Brandon Mill as a gated community. We asked them not to. They did it anyway. It's 200 and how many units? 274 units in Brandon Mill, something like that. The rents are very high. There is no affordable housing in Brandon Mill. We had those discussions with them. They did not do it. They gated it. It's not affordable. They added the dog park and they added everything else to it. On top of that comes all the other things that are coming. We know this is where this is headed. Unfortunately, what is always out there with me is what's going to happen on this particular site if we don't allow some density. We don't allow something that's a little bit uncomfortable with some folks with a change. Across this country, you have to have density. You have to have it if you want affordable housing. There are only two ways to do this, to push back against gentrification. There's only two ways. When you have a fast-growing community, whether it's Austin, Texas, Greenville, South Carolina, whatever, you land bank, and this city's been very aggressive about land banking. That's where we buy property, we own property, we can do things that are amazing. So on Unity Park, we have land banked, about 8 different parcels, and we're going to create 500 affordable housing units in Unity Park. 500, the largest collection of affordable housing in the entire city of Greenville, around the edge of Unity Park, because we land banked. What else can you do? The only other thing anyone's been able to figure out what to do is inclusionary zoning. Well, we don't have those laws in South Carolina. So we use it every time we have a chance to have inclusionary development, because we have a hook in somebody. We can cause them to, they want sewer. Okay, we'll give you sewer, but you got to do inclusionary zoning. You got to provide 20% affordable. We're doing this all into the future. Every time we have a chance to do it. And it may look, this particular project, same thing happened here. They're going to build apartments. Okay, you're going to build apartments. That's nice. We don't really care if you're building apartments or not. Nothing too exciting about that. But I tell you what, if you do inclusionary zoning, 20%, we'll talk. We will talk. And that's kind of how we got down the road on this whole thing. You have to have, what's great about it, you have private parties doing all this. No city expenditures involved. They just said 20% is required for the private sector. But those are the two things, everybody. That's the two ways you would provide affordable housing. But yet every time we talk about affordable housing, it's always, oh, but not in my backyard. No, not here. No, it's too big. Oh, yes, it's always a little bit too big. It's the only way you can do it. Everybody, people in Charlotte would understand this argument. People in Atlanta wouldn't understand this argument. People in New York City and Brooklyn. It's the same argument. Everybody, but the affordable housing, it goes back, how passionately do you feel about this? People have to have a place to live. The homeless issue in this country, that didn't come out of nowhere. People say, oh, it's because of mental illness. Well, excuse me, people had mental illness in the years past too, but we didn't have homeless people everywhere. There's something structural going on here. And the structural thing is a lack of housing at all levels. And I believe that. And in all due respect to those who think there's some ulterior motives here or somebody wants to make a buck out of something, I don't care about any of that. I just know what I care about. We've got to start saying yes. Now, we put the developer through the ringer here. We've said, oh, by the way, we won't retail this. We want to change your architecture. We want to take off floors. And he basically did all the stuff we asked him to do. Lord Almighty, didn't come down to 4 floors, darn it. I wanted him to come down to 4 floors. I tried mightily. So the Planning Commission got a whole lot of 4 floors in the building. Didn't get everything I wanted, but they got some in the back. They got almost, so it's mostly 4 floors now. I'm still not happy. I wanted it 4 floors on Pendleton Street. I really did. But that's my give. That's my give. If I care about affordable housing in a structural sense, land banking, inclusionary zoning. I don't know any other way to do it. And I don't know that it's any different in this story anywhere in this country. And I'm absolutely, that's from my heart. That's what I'm trying to see happen in this community. It doesn't happen everywhere. You don't have a chance to do this everywhere. But this area in particular, I can't think of a better place. I can't think of a better place in all of Greenville where you want to have a beachhead of affordable housing than right in the middle of one of the hottest real estate plays in all of Greenville, which is West Greenville Business District. That's a hot spot. And by darn, we're going to put affordable housing right in the middle of it. Even though everything else around it's going to be very unaffordable and going the other direction. But I don't think it's time to say no to it. 44 units is a lot. That's how we meet our goal. We meet, 10. If you look at our whole list of how we're doing affordable housing in Greenville, we have 1,200 units now. Hooray, 1,200 units. How do we do it? Look at the list. It's a list this long now. 40 here, 80 here, 5 here, 7 here, 9 here, 12 here. It all adds up and we're all doing great. We're actually a little bit ahead of our goal, by the way, in the city of Greenville for affordable housing by doing this. So 44 is not insignificant. It's a win, and I'll take that win.
Just real quick. There is another way. We are coming up on our LMO, and if we appreciate everyone's commitment to affordable housing, and if we write that LMO, we make the incentives actually incentives, then we will have a boatload of affordable housing coming to the city. So I look forward to us being able to do that.
Getting it this week.
Kind of agree on that. But there are places that are more important than others to make sure we put a stake in the ground. All righty, do we have a motion in a second? We did. Yeah. Okay, clerk will call the roll.
This is approve the ordinance as amended with the amendments that were approved.
The first voter.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
No.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
No.
Mayor White.
Aye. Okay, thank you very
Approved.
much. All right, thank you all. Thank you all very much and being here tonight.
Go back to the consent agenda.
Huh?
Go back to the consent
Yeah,
agenda.
let's go right back. Go ahead, just plow right through. Just speak up, just speak.
Council, we have the consent agenda. This would be items 11A and 11B.
Motion second on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, clerk call the roll. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Regular agenda? We got 14.
Unfinished business, 14A, an ordinance to abandon President Street and a portion of Thruston Street.
So moved.
Second.
Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye.
And just before we move into the next one, I just want to thank
14.
the developer and staff for working with Mr. Smith on that and making sure
Did a
that
nice
issue
job
that
on that listing.
that we identified got resolved.
Yeah. Okay, 14B.
An ordinance to appropriate $9,254,100 in the Capital Projects Fund, to appropriate $750,000 in Law Enforcement Special Revenue Fund, and to authorize the use of $1,429,677 in previously appropriated funds in the Capital Projects Fund for the completion and renovations of the Public Safety Campus on Alden Road.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke. Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15A.
An ordinance. 15A, new business. An ordinance reapportioning the City of Greenville council districts based on the 2020 United States Census and other matters related thereto.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15B.
An ordinance to amend Section 19-2.2.4 Neighborhood Meetings of the Code by modifying subsection F exceptions to include annexations and zoning map amendments associated with annexation petitions.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
second. Want to hear from Shannon? Can we vote?
Good.
Clerk call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15C.
An ordinance to amend Section 19-1.11 definitions and 19-4.3 use-specific standards and 19 4.5 temporary uses and structures of the code to provide provisions for mobile food units.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second.
I have a question on this.
Appreciate it.
Question?
I appreciate y'all doing this because I've had some people
Mm-hmm.
who have food trailers, which is good, and they're much cleaner and all of the above, but they didn't have the same opportunity. And I thank y'all.
And one thing too, you know, these food trailers and food trucks are tomorrow's chefs. That's a big deal.
Wonderful, wonderful
Yeah.
people.
There's chefs today, but tomorrow's chefs
Shannon,
in buildings.
And just for clarification, if someone wants to set up a trailer in the mall parking lot that sells meat and fish, the key word is preparation, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So you have to prepare.
You have to prepare, but as the food industry changes, we have seen a shift from people wanting to operate a food truck to a food trailer, just because of some of it shifts. They don't necessarily want to have to maintain all of the automotive components of a food truck. And we've been receiving this from many members of our food service community for quite some time, wanting to see this amendment. So I think that we are trying to keep up with what is happening throughout the country within the food service industry. I'm glad that we were able to bring an amendment forward that's had such support from the community. We've received no letters from anyone in the community against this amendment, only letters of support. So
And many of those.
we are happy that we are able to respond to the community by bringing this forward to you all. So
Now, I didn't even know there was a difference until someone explained. I said, oh, no, that doesn't make sense to me. That's unfair. You know, people couldn't make money. I'm saying that doesn't make sense. They can't work in the city. I said, no, city is the place to be. Thank y'all so much for your support.
That's right. Did we vote?
And I-
No, sir, not yet. We're ready.
I don't do the things that don't go to
Clerk, call the roll.
Aye.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington. Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. 15D.
An ordinance to amend section 19-2.3.2, amendments to text and zoning district map of the Code of Ordinances by establishing subsection D4, 2/3 majority required in some circumstances.
So moved.
Second.
I have a question on that one too. What are some circumstances?
I'm sorry.
The language, 2/3 majority required in some circumstances. Do we have a list of circumstances where they're required, or we?
It's only when planning commission recommends denial.
That's right. When planning commission recommends denial of a
Back
rezoning,
to where we used to be years ago. I don't know how, I think it was a Scrivener's error that we actually lost it.
And well, given that, I'd like Shannon to give us examples. I can think of two since this council has been on board of when this would have applied. The first I can think of is Douthit and Leach.
Doesn't happen.
Does that include approvals as well?
no, only
No.
denials.
So they denied Douthit Leach. And then what happened?
It was approved by this body,
And then what, and what's the other example?
the woven.
The woven. Enough said there.
All righty. Call the roll.
Councilmember DeWorke.
Aye.
Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Brazington.
Aye.
Councilmember Stahl.
Aye.
Councilmember Dow.
Aye.
Mayor White.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Before everybody leaves tonight, we have a departure to recognize. Merle, please stand. We're going to stand. You're going to be, more people would always say to me, that Merle, he's the one of the nicest people I've ever met. I say, well, yeah, well, it wouldn't make it be too nice to you. I don't know if you got a big thing, but Merle, we appreciate your service to the city coming up here, and that was a big drastic change from the low country. I hope you saw some things and heard some things, and maybe in your new job, you won't be sitting in meetings at 9:15 or 9 o'clock at night. That'll be a good thing. But the big O is right of place. Hal Johnson used to be a director down there, so I'm very familiar with how on top of things they are down there. But thank you very, very much for your service and being here tonight. Thank you. All right, meeting adjourned.
9:06 PM.